not a quick bit, Jordan. This is insane.
Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to the SPL Saturday, Trelly, is what we are going to be jumping into. It's Gore. I just said your name, but it's Trelly over there. We're going to be having a lot of fun today. Of course, things starting a little later than normal, right? The SCC goes a little long, but of course, we always want to watch and support those broadcasts. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, who's been hanging out over the last, 40, 45 minutes. And, of course, we're going to be jumping into the SPL as soon as we can. First, though, we got to tell you what we're going to be looking at over the next few minutes and what you're going to be watching throughout the next few hours, right? Dragons Hounds starts things off. If I'm watching the end of that intro video, though, Trelly, I'm a little worried for the Dragons. The Hounds seem pretty excited talking to Hindu. Warriors playing the Leviathans a little bit later. Of course, if the Warriors win that one, I'm pretty sure they have not only clinched first seed, nobody can catch up to them. They are just on an absolute tear. And then Kings, Ferryman to close out the day. A lot of good sets, a lot of good SMITE that I am certain is in our future. Of course, it all is going to start here with Dragons Hounds. But Trelly, the thing that we've been kind of looking at, and especially with how things are going, right? Warriors today is one that I'm keeping my eyes on. Warriors tomorrow is one I'm keeping my eyes on, as well as the Hounds and the Kings, because depending on how the Ferryman set goes, depending on how the Warrior set goes for the Kings, depending on how this Dragon set and the Raven set go for the Hounds, all of a sudden, the Order division gets incredibly interesting. Now, I'm going to say, no matter what happens, maybe if the Leviathans find a win and some other insane things happen here for the Dragons, who also need wins here on out, Warriors would need losses here on out in order for there to be a conversation about first in the Chaos division. Everything's a little closer on the other side, right? Kings, you eat 2 losses, suddenly you're 5-3. If you're the Hounds, you eat 2 wins, suddenly you're 5-3. Ravens, you win against the Hounds tomorrow, suddenly you're 5-3, right? A lot that can shift on the left-hand side of the screen. And meanwhile, fighting for, second, third, it seems like over on the right-hand side. So Dragons, Hounds, this one suddenly has a little bit of weight to it, right? If the Dragons lose this one out, that's it for the Chaos division as well, right? Even if the Warriors start to lose completely, they've got more wins than anybody else could make up at that point. And so that's a kind of big weight for you to sit on if you're still trying to get first. And, of course, if you're the Hounds, you're so much closer. It's not even like, okay, we got to win 4 sets, they got to lose 4 sets, and then some weird head-to-head stuff starts happening. For the Hounds, it's just like, all right, if we can win this, 4-3, baby, that's a step closer to the 5-1 at the top, and suddenly you're in a much more interesting position.
Yeah, I would say both of these teams aren't even concerned about standings right now. They're just trying to get these wins, trying to get them work together because, the Eldritch Hounds, I think, have impressed a lot of us. Yeah. The Jade Dragons maybe having a little bit of a higher expectations and haven't really lived up to them.
Long games. That's what's kind of been synonymous right now for the Jade Dragons, and you don't even have to take it from us. In fact, Trelly, you say that you think they're not worried about the standings. I think we should just find out. We got an interview with LASBRA that we got to sit down a little earlier this week, kind of hear his thoughts on the matchup.
Our team didn't do particularly well. I had personally a lot of misplays, and I think we're still working on key communication, and especially in the mid game. And then the late games were super close, and it didn't go our way, and that's a bit sad. Yeah, I mean, going into the next, going further in this phase, we still have some communication things we're trying to figure out. Pick and bans are going fine, and yeah, we've just been dropping some sets that we probably shouldn't have dropped. But overall, I think we've been very competitive. The Hounds this phase has been really good. I mean, again, they're coming off a weekend with a 4-0 2-set win. You can't really complain about that. They have very close games. They go to the late game quite often. But yeah, they'd impress me. Yeah, going into the Hounds this week, we are feeling pretty good. We are coming off the weekend with 2 set losses, and they just won 2 sets without dropping a game. But I still think we're the stronger team. But they definitely impressed me.
Definitely improvements they want to make, but he's been looking at the Hounds, and they've been impressive, right?
Yeah.
This is a matchup. Again, for anyone, it's been a little while since we've actually dropped this little tidbit of information, or at least that I have. You're looking at it, we've got 2 divisions of 4 teams, right? These 2 divisions are going to play in division twice, right? So if you're the Dragons, you're playing the Leviathans twice. You're playing the Warriors twice. That honestly, that's kind of that fate kind of sucks at the moment. Anybody that has to face the Warriors twice is going to be sad about it. But you're playing these other teams that are out of division only once, right? That's where actually a lot of the win streak that the Warriors have been able to pick up is there, right? They're 6-0. They won, I think, at this point, maybe all, if not all but one of their out-of-division matchups, and they've been winning their in-division matchups as well. So, of course, for this one, this is the only time this phase that you're going to get to see these teams play, and that makes me even more excited for how Picks and Pans is going to go, Trelly. Now, let's talk last week. A lot of Horus, a lot of Kern, a lot of Marty in terms of picks, things that were making it through. Horus went from almost like guaranteed ban to half banned, half not, right?
Yep.
Serqet really skyrocketed in terms of ban priority. You can actually see 4th overall in the league. And actually 4th, I believe, for both of these teams, which is doubly interesting. But the Vamanas, your Aphrodites, your Hells, still being kind of the top 3 in general kind of blanket statements. Horus, Marty, Nox, Vamana are going to join the ban column here. And this Nox is the one that, out of all the others that I've mentioned, it has been on the rise, and it feels like, especially in this matchup, a way to stifle PPM.
It certainly has been. I think that the Nox is just a very annoying matchup for a lot of the top meta supports right now. You got to think easy lockdown, easy engaged fights. It's always going to work out. But the Hercules is a pick that any team would want to grab at this moment. And especially when you got a solo laner like Ducky on your squad, why not look to grab that Hercules in the first pick position? The Jade Dragons could do something interesting here, though. You talked about the Aphrodite. It is still open. It's a pick that Mike has liked to go to. And especially taking away the Rama from Coast, I think, could be a great idea. He has been on point with the Rama as of recent. And I don't know if you saw the Hazer Power Rankings tier list, but he's pretty high up there. Coast is looking to be one of the best ADCs, and it looks like that might be the call here. Jade Dragons hovering the Rama. They don't want to give it into Coast's hands.
Honestly, it goes back to something we saw a little bit last year.
Yep.
It feels like when Ram's on the edge of the meta, he gets scooped up, and for a long time we were having the conversation. It's like Ishtar, Kern, if one of those gets banned, you're going Ram. And that was just where it was. Some people vote specifically kept going Cupid, but it was here or there, right? Whether or not it was going to work. Ram, we've been seeing a lot of this, and we've seen it throughout the year. Sometimes you just start a fight with a few snipes, insta-gib to half health like one of their carries, and then good luck suddenly in the fight. Vote's going to be piloting that one this time around. And much kind of like you had mentioned, actually highly valued the Ferryman yesterday. We're always getting into the top 2. So same spot where the Dragons have it, and then the Ravens as well, putting a little bit of focus on it towards the beginning of their games, except for Game 2. So not surprising to see that so heavily prioritized. The Hercules, of course, has always been at the top for the last few weeks. Yemoja and Merlin, though. I mean, look, Charlie, I'm reading the top 6 names that we're about to have once this Guan gets locked in, assuming it gets locked in. I don't think either team's walking away from this unhappy.
Not yet. No, so far, yeah, looking pretty good. Looking at matchup-wise, tons of healing. Tons of engage, plenty of disengage. I tend to agree. I think the real winner here is going to be who gets the best matchup in the jungle, right?
It's the viewers.
Well, obviously you, the viewer, are also the real winner, but in this case, both junglers want to hold their pick until last, right? That's usually how it goes. Oathhh wants to get a good matchup. LASBRA wants to get a good matchup, but someone is going to be forced into picking that jungle pick early, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more bans thrown that way. The Thor taken away by the Jade Dragons, and the Hounds throwing some bans over towards Dardez, going to remove that Hera, a pick that really only he is going to right now.
Yeah, I think it's so weird when you have to go through what kind of mid-bans are we dealing with, and you have to immediately think, all right, so Morgan Le Fay suddenly, Hera, the Opwash admittedly has at least been in the area when healers are involved. Try to control, like you said, what Dardez is going to bring. Fenrir locked in. I'm a little surprised to see maybe the higher priority for the jungler. We've been seeing a lot of that maybe patience shoved down towards literally the last pick for the second pick team.
Yep.
but LASBRA's going to be picking that one up. Feels like it's a good way to get things aggressive, especially early on. Fenrir, like Guan Yu, Hercules matchup is going to be an interesting one, but over in the duo lane, Aphrodite, we've seen sub-level 5, can get a little bullied. And Mike even doing, I'm going to assume, his best Fenrir impression.
I think so, yeah. I can't quite tell if that's what we're going
Well, the first
here.
one definitely looked like he was doing the card art.
Yeah. And if that's the case, do you think Mike takes this pick into support? He's like, hey, I'm getting ready. I'm gonna be brutalizing. This is me doing my Mike impression. He's like, I'm gonna jump on him like this, and then I'm gonna swipe on him with brutalize. And he could have a good matchup into Yemoja.
Do you think so? Yesterday, Mifflin and I were kind of joking when game 1, right? You had Scream playing Achilles,
Right.
And we were like, Haddix is just sitting there like subtle, not even subtly BMing him, but like, you're gonna miss those.
Yeah, I would have hit that.
That's Mike. What if him and LASBRA get maybe that kind of that energy going between them, right? It's definitely one that's fun with the Ravens. Although I had almost instigated something, and Vin like rolled his eyes like, oh god, don't get them started. And so maybe it's just something going on with them. But yeah, you've got in theory 3 people on the Dragons who can play it. I'm assuming Afro goes support, but you never know with this team. And especially after that first draft we saw from the Ravens yesterday, sometimes you never know, period. Bakasura, Cernunnos locked in for the Hounds. Top to bottom, Trelly. Standard draft.
Yep.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Like it feels like they just kind of looked at what's meta, decided to play exactly that, and now it's going to come down to execution on field.
Yeah, I need to see what this last pick is before I decide where everything goes here on the Jade Dragon. Still does look like a normal meta composition.
Yeah, nothing too crazy.
But it could be switched up entirely by the last
Dardez
pick.
does like Aphrodite in mid.
No one's liked
on
her,
occasion.
No one's liked her in mid this season, unfortunately, but still could be the call. And we're not going to get anything spicy. Just going to be the Agni, which means, yeah, Fenrir over the jungle, Guan solo, and, of course, PBM taking the Afro solo. The only issue I find with a comp like this, of course, is that you don't have a traditional hard carry to be linked to with that Afro. Rama's going to take a while to get online. More often than not, Guan Yu is going to horse way too far away to stay linked. So you got to try and kiss LASBRA. But I don't know if you've seen LASBRA's play style, Gore, but it's a lot of I'm going to lurk really far away in the jungle and sort of go in later, which means you're not going to be kissed to Fenrir unless PBM is also really far in the back line, which is not Aphrodite's traditional play style. So it seems more so like picking the Afro because it's strong, not really that it works in this composition. But of course, if you get late game, Vote can certainly hard carry a game with the Afro link if he's able to get online, get some items, and not get too far behind.
It also feels, and we saw it yesterday, and so I'm going to give that comparison, but having the key links, like being able to swap your kiss mid-fight, I think Hurry had a beautiful segue of Afro to, I think it was Vin to then Scream to then Vin again. And if Mike can hit something like that in the middle of a team fight late game, right? You grab LASBRA, then you grab Vote, then you grab Dardez, you keep everybody not only topped off, but maybe you're saving some people with your ult.
Yep.
Definitely maybe opens that room. The one thing, we discussed a little bit, and we've been talking about this Bakasura, is a lot of the other junglers in the meta, a lot of leaps, a lot of dashes, a lot of engage. Baka with the cripple feels like that shuts down a good chunk of what Fenrir wants to do and how he's going to fight. Is that something that is a necessity in your mind for that fight or in that matchup, or do you think that because of the way LASBRA plays specifically, we might not even see him in a 1v1?
Well, I would say LASBRA doesn't want a 1v1 Oathh at all, because his 2 damaging abilities besides ult and I suppose his auto attacks really do just get shut down by Regurgitate. If you're trying to jump and use Brutalize and the cripple goo, it's just not going to work out. So I'm thinking the Fenrir is going to be focusing other targets, the Cern, for example, the Merlin, these characters without CC immune ults who just need to hold on to their bead so they don't get picked up by Ragnarok. That's probably the target more often than not. Unless, of course, LASBRA gets off to a crazy lead when you can just lead a fight with a jump, kill someone with a few auto attacks, Hydra's procs, things like that.
I think Oathh is someone to keep your eye on, though. It's fun watching these, keeping track of first bloods. Both of these teams have 8, Trelly. So matched up in that part. Except 7 of the 8 that the Hounds have been on Oathh. So if you're looking for first blood this game, you should probably be looking towards the jungle. We'll find out in game number 1 with J-Mac and Mifflin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gore and Trelly. We jump into the Hounds versus the Dragons. 2 teams, at least at the moment, fighting for what could be 2nd seed in their divisions, respectively. The Jade Dragons got to win out for a chance at 1st seed. Meanwhile, the other towns don't have to work nearly as hard to go for 1st. but have definitely had maybe a stronger performance than expected so far this season, Mifflin, because Eldritch Hounds came in, a couple of new talents to the SPL with Quig and Coast, expecting maybe normally a bit of a slower start for this team to ramp up, but already starting out 3-3 in their first 6 games of played. Now going up against the Jade Dragons, who was a team that was expected to be maybe a little bit higher up in their division, but have had maybe not the strongest performance. So this set for both these two teams could be a good indication for maybe the remainder of their phase.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. The Eldritch Hounds, of course, have had a phenomenal freshman phase so far. I've really been impressed in particular by Oathhh, but we have known for a while that Oathhh was ready to make that jump to SPL and has since made his home here very comfortably. Quig as well. I mean, just the initiators of the Eldritch Hounds have really stepped up. So Oathhh, Quig, and Ducky, incredibly impressive. The Jade Dragons, on the other hand, I couldn't tell you what's going on with these guys. I mean, you've got the shot-calling core of PBM, the only Warriors core of Dardez, Nika, and Vote, one of the strongest backline duos that we've had in the league in phases of past. Dardez and Vote have absolutely dominated entire years at times as well, but this year, struggling to piece it all together. Still having some impressive individual performances. LASBRA in particular has just looked amazing. I mean, the Serqet feels like a perma-ban against him, and I don't imagine that stops anytime soon because he could just absolutely dominate a map with that pick. But when it comes down to the Jade Dragons and the Hounds, I feel like it almost inevitably will make its way to the late game. And that conversation, it might be a ways off. We might be jumping the shark a bit having it now. I'm not sure which one of these two teams really comes out on top.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least one early indication of where some of the pressure might come from the Eldritch Hounds, I should say, comes from the last little tidbit that Gore threw us from the desk. 7 of the 8 first bloods have been in Oathh's hands for the Eldritch Hounds, so definitely the one who's been getting things started for his team when they do get off to that start. We'll have to see if Oathhh makes his impact known on the map with this Bakasura, but typically we don't see the Bakas get online until at least level 5 once Ultimate comes through, once you get that first item in hand potentially, but have seen at least a couple early signs of life. And it feels like that might be the best time maybe for LASBRA to get active is before that level 5 does hit, because once level 5 goes through, as Charlie highlights, completely shuts down what Fenrir wants to do for damage.
Yeah, that Fenrir could struggle a bit, but I mean, damage output from Unchained or just auto attacks, I'm never counting Fenrir out. You know, there have been plenty of counter picks to him, plenty of ways to stop Brutalize or prevent Ragnarok, and Fenrir has still seen a good deal of success regardless, so play on field going to be the separator there. I do agree, though, that Bakasura is on an interesting trajectory for power curve. I think saying level 5 he gets strong, I mean, yes, you get access to the ultimate, of course, the cripple field, preventing some of those 1v1 potentials, preventing that Fenrir from getting involved. But it feels like Bakasura, maybe more so than any other auto attack jungler, really needs that first crit item, really needs that bladed boomerang before he can really get things done.
Yeah, and get those crits online, especially when you do have that ultimate. Now it's not just one crit in front of you, it could be a couple of ones if you can hit a couple of different players out there. We should be jumping ourselves back in the game here in just a moment between the Eldritch Hounds and the Jade Dragons to kick things right back off and haven't missed out on any of the action. The immediate 2v2. Oathhh goes in against LASBRA just to continue to put the poke up against the jungler and keep the Jade Dragons under that tier 1 tower. Also got to sing the praises of BennyQ for his performance so far this phase. Has had a couple of oddball picks. The Atlas has popped out a couple of times, but has mostly been sticking towards these more standardized mages. This Merlin was one that he went to time and time again, even last year when his team needed him to find some big wins.
Yeah, Merlin just a consistent pick for Benny. Quig forced to use the beads early, but behind those bastions, no more auto attacks will come from Vote. That's tough, though. Now for the next 160 seconds, won't have access to CC immunity. LASBRA could spend his time just hyper-farming the jungle, trying his best to hit 5 before those beads are back up, and Quig will not have an answer.
Yeah, unfortunately, LASBRA now having to face off against what makes Oathhh so good, the ability to just eat through these camps with that very short cooldown on Eat Minion. Makes it so easy to go for these invades on Baka. And just continuously putting pressure throughout the jungle. Rotates over to right side, help take down the cooldown buff, gives that one over to Ducky. He's gone back over to one of his signature picks. This Hercules has been one that Ducky has made multiple massive performances on for his team.
Yeah, Ducky almost single-handedly carries the Eldritch Hounds through that qualifier tournament with this Hercules pick. Seems like nobody was willing to ban it against him, and they probably should have, considering how consistent he is on it. base defense, base siege. Ducky always creating space for his team on a pick like this, and Hercules is just solidly in the meta right now. He was ahead of the curve a bit during play-ins, but I think everybody has caught up and realized that Hercules is just that good. Surprised to see that Ducky's been allowed to take it as often as he has. Perhaps a byproduct of having such big names on your team. If Oathhh is going to absorb that Thor ban every single time, or if you're worried about maybe some of Coast's more aggressive picks, he's going to eat up some of those bans for you as well. Will allow Ducky to get one of his bread and butter a bit more consistently.
Oathhh trying to go for a blue buff invade. It's on spawns. Now it'll be a 2v2 potential by the buff. He use a little bit of damage. Does have that eat minion to be able to absorb the camp, but LASBRA stun is just enough to hold back Oathhh and prevent the eat minion from even going through. So invade unsuccessful on one side, and going to be unsuccessful for Mike as well as he steps too far forward. And BennyQ, with his rotation with the dual lane, takes down Mike for first blood on the Hounds.
Yeah, wishful thinking there. Maybe Mike just saying, all right, well, they're distracted on right. You know, there's a team fight over there. If they're rotating anywhere, it's going to be to this engagement. Incorrect. The Eldritch Hounds really wanted those back camps and were not happy. Haven't seen just a PBM where they were previously. So shut him down. Grab themselves first blood very early in this game. Putting it on Benny. A good start. We've seen Benny switch up the build a bit, though. I mean, I'm so used to seeing Lost Artifact immediately into Doom Orb. Benny's been one to go towards the Conduit Gem Chronos Pendant build. It seems like that could just be what we're looking at here. Consistent CDR, abilities out there consistently and often means that you're really going to have a hard time rotating through that lane.
Maybe a second pick on a Mike. 2 ultimates used, rooted in, a dash by VaporishCoast. Quig gets the last bit of damage for the kill, but that puts up 2 for the Eldritch Hounds now. 1 on Benny from earlier, and now a kill for Quig to kick things off.
J-Mac, is it too early for me to say it? I'm hating these healer supports for Mike. It just doesn't feel like Mike is playing to his strengths. He's invading back camps at level 3. Imagine if he was just, I don't know, a warrior or a guardian or literally any of his standard picks from seasons of past. Seems like Mike just has really perhaps liked it in scrims were ranked, but the hell in Aphrodite, just maybe there's a dissonance between the proposed play style and the play on field that you can really achieve with that pick. But Aphrodite now down twice in 4 minutes, really slowing down that build. And if it's Prophetic Cloak in first slot, you better believe it is, that's not something you want slowed down. Supports struggle enough stacking that one up.
Dardez fast speeds, get away from the ultimate of Oathhh as he drops the Cripple Coup immediately under his feet. And Oathhh will just go back to farming. It's another day in the office for him. Walk up, steal a set of relics, immediately go back to his farm game. But PBM being down, Quig halfway till his ultimate is back up. Mike, unknown if he's even halfway to getting an ultimate at this point. For that level 5 as he's died twice. And Ducky getting the better end of the trades over here in the solo lane.
Golden Blade diff.
Keeping Nika all the way down at a tier 1 tower. We've been seeing a few of the solo laners on this Hercules. A couple of them are still going to the Golden Blade, but we've been seeing a little bit of delineation from there. Not quite as many going for the guaranteed. Ducky used his dash, and Nika his ultimate, going for the guaranteed attempt to the blue. Boulder goes through. Oathhh able to walk up, doesn't even need to use the eat minion. We'll just auto-attack it twice and take the buff away.
Man, I really thought Ducky was going to be in a bit more trouble there. He's not tanky just yet, had used Driving Strike early, so Brutalize could have been channeled. Oathhh shows face, but doesn't have ultimate. So potential for Nika to just stick to him with Cavalry Charge and have LASBRA continually outpour that damage, but instead, the Jade Dragons had eyes for their own blue buff, and unfortunately for the Jade Dragons, want does not necessarily translate to get every single time, so no, in spite of wanting it real bad, it's the Eldritch Hounds taking it easily thanks to an auto attack secure from Oathhh. And that's not what you want to see if you're a Jade Dragons fan. Now this bleed on Lad, which is going to start to slowly work its way towards mid once Quig starts to rotate out. It's that 6-minute mark, generally where you see that happen. And now that bleed on right starting to begin as well. Means that your only bastion is in mid, and Dardez is nursing a slight lead and has a significant power spike. As far as damage is concerned, Dardez has an advantage over BennyQ right now. But leveraging it and playing around it going to be difficult when your jungler is falling behind, your duo is falling behind, and your solo is behind.
Yeah, that's a lot behind.
And it happened early, didn't it?
And it's not just in that. 2,000 gold, 1,300 XP. The Eldritch Hounds have up over the Dragons just 6.5 minutes in the game. I mean, this is normally a point where we're seeing 10 to 12 minutes through, and usually it's this same Gold Fury that's a little bit later in the game, but the Hound's going to jump the gun early, and it's going to be a Gold Fury to them. Add another nice little chunk of change to the pockets of the Eldritch Hounds. And they are really expediting the pace of this game. Mike trying to rotate through. Did catch back up. He was about a level and a half down to Quig. Now caught back up to even at level 7. But at this point, it's just the pacing the Eldritch Hounds have set for themselves. And maybe a gank onto Vote. Once again, Oathhh walks up, drops the ultimate, gets a set of beads, and he'll charismatically walk away.
I mean, Oathhh has made it look very easy to burn resources, hasn't it? Feels like the last few times we've watched Bakasura, it's a whole lot of farm, late game. Okay, I've got my crit, now it's time to team fight, but I'll wait till everybody else has done their thing. Oathhh is just walking through these lanes, dropping Regurgitate, and he's gotten beads every time. Dardez, beads, dash. Vote, beads, dash. And because the Eldritch Hounds, or maybe I'm digging a little too deep into it, but I've got faith in the Eldritch Hounds laners. Well, now that he's burnt those relics, Oathhh does not need to rotate back through. I trust VaporishCoast to go for solo attempts up against Vote. He's one of the most aggressive hunters in the league, just needs a little bit of an edge. Having removed that relic is just the edge that VaporishCoast does need, so Vote got to play very safe for the near future.
A little bit of damage coming through from Dardez. Mike attached to him just to make sure that he stays topped off in health. But Oathhh, Ducky, the two of them have been holding a pretty nice lead for themselves in their respective roles, about a 1 level up for each. A lot of that coming from Oathh's early game invades as well. Took a couple of back camps away, a blue buff at one point. Has really slowed down the pacing for LASBRA. It's really kind of made this early game a little bit awkward for the Jade Dragons. I mean, when you're sitting almost 3,000 gold down this early in the game, feels like it's so hard to fight back in.
Man, look at the totem diff, too.
Totem's 5 to 1.
Yeah, call it 6.
It is 6 now.
That's right.
I will do just that. 6 totems to 1 for Ducky. And usually Nika's pretty good about being on top of those. Ultimate from Vote. He lands down. Boxing up against Coast, but Coast is actually going to run away from this one. He's baiting them forward because Oathhh is here. Ultimate available. He'll drop in the path away, and it's a kill for Oathhh. Third on the board for the Hounds.
Immediately into the taunt spam as well.
That's
Coast,
just the Coast kill.
I mean, that's a classic. Classic Coast there, but legitimately a fight that probably should have just gone moot had Vote rolled away. Instead, gets a bit over-aggressive. VaporishCoast looks good in the boxing match and potentially still could have won from the position that he found himself in, but 3 archers for Vote means that VaporishCoast likely, had he decided to aggress, would have just lost out if Vote decided to back up. So the Jade Dragons try to find something on map, perhaps pressured by Oathh's rotation earlier on. Vote feels like he needs to get something done because they're bleeding out everywhere on map. Baited in and shut down. The Eldritch Hounds looking real good early.
Ducky even putting the paint to Nika on the right side of the map. I'm actually curious as to where maybe the gold allocation is, because I mean, we're sitting up 3,000 plus at this point. Who's got the big net worth difference? 800 for BennyQ in mid. A lot of that from that First Blood bounty that came through there.
1,000 out of solo.
Wow, 1,000 from solo might be the biggest one. That's really to keep your eyes on there, is the fact that 2/3 of the lead for the Eldritch Hounds is just coming from Benny and Ducky alone.
Yeah, I mean, Ducky's been shoving Nika's tower down the entire game. Every single minion wave feels like it's just gone in there. And that's Golden Blade diff. It's just additional pressure. Speaking of pressure, it's on map now. The Eldritch Hounds have taken the Pyromancer, and it's just a fast pace. This is the adaptation that I've really liked seeing from the Eldritch Hounds. Their first couple of sets in the SPL felt like they were trying to adapt to maybe a Camelot King style of game. Let's slow it down, play for the team fight. It's not necessarily the strongest portion of each one of these players' play style. So instead, with the Oni Warriors seeing success, the Eldritch Hounds said, oh, we used to play fast in the SEC. We can play fast here too. And have just really picked up their pace, constantly finding aggression on map. And clearly the Jade Dragons just weren't ready for it. That is an uncontested Gold Fury into an uncontested Pyromancer, and it could just happen again.
Ducky's got so much pressure against Nika, he actually forces Nika to pull the buff under tower and lose out on all of that gold too. So it's not just the minions that are getting pushed in from the wave itself. It's also these buff camps that Nika just cannot get his hands on, cannot get that proper farm for. In 11.5 minutes, 4,000, call it 4,500 gold at this point for the Eldritch Hounds, and continuing to climb. The Jade Dragons, they've got to draw a line in the sand somewhere, Myth. I mean, where is that line to be drawn at this point? Is it at the next Fury? Is it the next Pyromancer? Do they wait for a Fire Giant to step up?
Yeah, you cannot let the Eldritch Hounds get another uncontested objective. I don't care which one it is. It just can't happen. The Runic Bomb in pocket now with the Eldritch Hounds lead essentially guarantees at least one Tier 1 tower and it'll likely happen within the next 4 or 5 minutes. Gold Fury needs to be prevented. The Eldritch Hounds are slowly starting to slip away with this game. And I know I had said earlier on this week, 3,000, 4,000 gold, Smite inflation's crazy, year 10, money's not what it used to be. And it isn't. But they've also got a bigger lead than the standard. 2,000, we're not concerned. 3,000, not a real big deal. 4, 5, 6,000, it's starting to stack up. That's about an item for each player. And you really start thinking to yourself, wow, I mean, even if I outplay them, they've just got more stats than me. They've got more damage, more HP. And that's adding up very quickly. The experience certainly significant already as well. Oathhh, 2 levels up on LASBRA, has access to second relic, which means he can get into that back line real easily, whereas LASBRA's going to have to try the old-fashioned way on feet to get into the back line of the Eldritch Hounds. You can see it, even in positioning from the Jade Dragons, the concern around this Gold Fury. They don't necessarily know when it's going to happen, so it's a 4-man rotation over just to make sure nothing is happening. Fortunately for the Eldritch Hounds, they weren't putting pressure on the Gold Fury. They were aiming for towers, and left's the first one to fall.
I mean, the Jade Dragons stepped up as a 4-stack through the jungle just moments ago. Sent Oathhh back to base. He wasn't going to step up anywhere near. Then as soon as they backed away, Hounds, they're the ones who take charge. Now it's a tier 1 tower in left. Didn't even use the Runic Bomb to drop that tier 1, so still in pocket for Quig. Double bomb stun from Dardez, while Flashy doesn't get them anything. Except a little bit of damage up onto Benny and Oathhh at that point. Coast and Quig, they'll continue stepping up into enemy lines. Quig's really trying to go for this purple invade.
I mean, look at the prophetic diff, too. I was wondering to myself, why is Quig so tanky? That was 5, 6 auto attacks. Executioner already finished. Devourer's Gauntlet full stack. You'd think Vote would do a little bit more. It's because there's 12 stacks on that prophetic and 20 on the Thieves already, as opposed to the 3 from PBM on his prophetic on the other side. The Jade Dragons, they need this Aphrodite to get tanky, not just for Mike's sake, but for whoever he's connected to.
Mike does get at least one more stack going to himself, but still being down 8 comparatively. Thief stack's not really going anywhere because, well, this is where Quig has been the entire time, in the enemy jungle, in his jungle, not really focusing on getting into the lane pressure. He'll be able to drag at least a couple of camps together with his mid laner to start getting a few more of those stacks through, but and this is a game dictated right now by the Eldritch Hounds. The Jade Dragons have got to find a stop somewhere, somehow, to one of these spots. But, I mean, at this point, who's the best one to even try and find a pick on? Is it Benny? Is it Oathhh? I mean, where do you try and find a kill, maybe even before these objectives kick off?
Man, it's difficult, right? You got to burn relics first. So whoever's relics down is generally going to be the standard answer. So have LASBRA rotate through. Have we seen Ragnarok just yet? I'd say no. So Ragnarok burn A beads could be a starting point for the Jade Dragons. Instead, it's aggression on the right. Pyromancer pulled out. Eldritch Hounds don't seem to realize it. They will now. And it's an immediate Primal Fury pool in response. A consolation prize for the Jade Dragons that they decide for themselves. Maybe realizing they're not exactly favored in the Gold Fury fight. So take at least a little bit on map. And this is why I'm always pushing. You need to desync the objectives. That's how you hold a lead. If they're not up at the same time, that trade never happens. The Eldritch Hounds, effectively slowed down by the Jade Dragons, forces both objectives on map.
Ducky steps up, CC'd out. Runic Bomb used on Tier 1 tower. And that's now both mid and duo side Tier 1s taken away by the Hounds. Now nursing a 6,000 gold lead 15 minutes in. It's every 5 minutes we check in. The lead has gone up another 2,000 or more at this point. The Eldritch Hounds are just taking everything on the map that they can at this point. Anything that they want is just theirs. They might as well be the owner of the shop at this point. The Jade Dragons, the only proactive play that they've made it so far has been to take that Pyromancer. It's mostly just to keep it away from the Eldritch Hounds at this point. BennyQ up 2 levels in mid, 2 levels in the jungle and solo lane as well. The level disparity is really starting to creep up on the Dragons.
LASBRA used it all.
It's going to be shown here. LASBRA's second use of Ragnarok this game defensively, and it doesn't even matter. He is gone. Nika now nowhere to go.
Stuck.
Trapped against the wall and the waters, and it's Oathhh to pick up the double kill for the Hounds.
LASBRA used both of his mobility abilities to clear a blue buff, and Oathhh said, probably shouldn't have done that, bud. Immediately rotates through and makes short work of the enemy jungler. And it's a rotation to the Fire Giant immediately afterward. You might be wondering, why aren't the Jade Dragons here? Do they not know? They know. They absolutely know that this Fire Giant has been pulled, but there's no way they can defend. Not with Vote on the opposite side of the map. Not with Mike and Dardez putting out that much damage up against Ducky. The Eldritch Hounds, it's a blitzkrieg in game 1, and it's happened so quickly. Could push this lead even further. No more runic bombs in pocket. Means that if they do want to go into this tier 2, it'd take a little while, but 4 stacked and with a minion wave right behind them, and with no rotation from Dardez, it won't be that slow.
Ducky's going to walk up and try and stop the tier 2 from going down on his side. Will not be able to do so, but can fight up against Vote. Vote goes to the sky. Needs all 3 snipes if he has any hopes of taking down Ducky. Only finds the last one. Beads is instantly pushed against the wall. Aegis is there. One more shot from Ducky. The roll is through. Ducky will beads the slow and walk up for a solo kill on Vote.
I mean, that's perfect patience from Ducky there. PBM now steps a little too far forward. Where's the CC? Oathhh leaps in, and there's the damage.
Regurgitate through. Mike has used his ultimate, and Coast will dive in aggressively. Not enough damage from him. Said he'll eat a lot more back in return. Aegis to get away from the damage of Nika. Now Ducky has shown back up to the party. The Jade Dragons stuck under the tier 2 tower. Only BennyQ with an ult, but that's just his transformation. Won't even need it because it's a tier 2 tower uncontested for the Eldritch Hounds.
Vote's still dead for 10 seconds. Mike forced back to base here. What can the Hounds do? A pick on the LASBRA would have been massive. Instead, they'll come up empty-handed on that attempt. Tier 2 on left, though. Just a little bit of gold to collect. A bit of farm on the map. It's not a bastion of safety. It's not anywhere the Jade Dragons will defend. It's just free resources. Once more for the Eldritch Hounds, uncontested, as they knock down the last remaining tower of the Jade Dragons. We're a couple seconds away from a Pyromancer respawn and a few seconds more from the Oni Fury. I imagine the Eldritch Hounds will head there next.
This might be one of the most substantial leads that we've seen in the SPL so far this phase, especially from the Eldritch Hounds. I mean, 8,500 gold, no towers left standing on the map. It's only Phoenixes left for the Jade Dragons.
4 levels in the jungle.
We haven't even seen
solo.
We haven't seen a true team fight yet, Miff. It's been a pick here, a pick there, a couple players step up. That fight by the tier 2 in mid is the closest thing we've gotten to a team fight, but Vote wasn't there. He was dead. Ducky hadn't rotated in, so a 4v4 so far for the Eldritch Hounds. They've done nothing but win these ones. 6-0. Not a single kill yet for the Jade Dragons. They just can't seem to find a pick. They're not going to find much more than just the Pyromancer. They took that one down just a moment ago, so now 2 in pocket for them. Bunch of trade out of Oni Fury for the Hounds.
Oni Fury timing, maybe not ideal here for the Eldritch Hounds. You really want that as close to Fire Giant spawn as possible, so you're able to just win out naturally on the map state. Instead, drop it down for the resources as the Jade Dragons scrounge for what little they can find on map. A tier 1 on right goes a long way when you haven't got a lot of gold, so we'll help out a bit, at least in the ward department. Maybe you can head back to base, pick some of those up as you try and defend this next Fire Giant. Base defense has not looked great so far from the Jade Dragons. Haven't been truly tested, the Hounds that is, on these Phoenixes. That seems to be the major stopping point for a lot of these SPL teams, but siege potential with a Merlin feels pretty good. Even better still with Ducky being an unkillable monster on the map. So I think the Jade Dragons, if they want any chance at keeping this game alive for 5, 10, 15 more minutes, and they need that time, you got to prevent this Fire Giant from going down.
LASBRA's, he can't even get farm at his speed buff at this point just because Quig is walking up with the full force of the Hounds standing nearby. BennyQ, the only one separated from the team. He's making his way through mid to jump over to the right side to join his team. There's no Fire Giant buff on the Hounds. They're just stepping up to Phoenix range just because they've got the pressure to do so. 20 starting to be achieved by a few different players. Ducky, Oathhh, and now BennyQ joins those ranks for the Eldritch Hounds, but it's right back to Fire Giant. Jade Dragons have no answer. They haven't stepped up to fight at any objectives so far this game, Miff, and now with the second Fire Giant for the Hounds, that's going to continue to ring true.
The Jade Dragons no stranger to dragging out these games, making them go a bit slower. We'll have to stop the Eldritch Hounds now on Phoenix line. I mean, with history as an indicator, I would say easy task, right? A lot of these teams have done very well in the SPL at prolonging the game. You could sacrifice all 3 Phoenixes, but it feels like it takes 3, 4, 5 Fire Giants afterward to actually close out the match. The deficits are not usually this big and this quick, right? Usually we're talking 30 minutes, 10,000. This is a 20-minute, 10,000 difference with levels, items, wards, vision, relics, all separating these two teams. I imagine we see the Eldritch Hounds go for a 4-1 split, have Oathhh be that solo agent, likely in mid. He wins the 1v1 against legitimately every single member of the Jade Dragons. Might even have to dedicate 2 to stopping Oathhh. He's allowed to use his HP bar more so as a resource, can poke damage in towards the Phoenix, back up, resustain with E minion, or with the Fire Giant, rinse, repeat, and slowly work through the burn. Or potentially make it a bit quicker here. LASBRA, why you here, bud?
Well, jump in.
Should be out. He's got
LASBRA does have ultimate, so does Oathhh, and I wonder if maybe they'll use it to try and force each other through. Beads available for Laz, though, and Oathhh is glad to chase him away, because look at the team fight on the left-hand side. The Eldritch Hounds are going to force a 4-stack out of the Jade Dragons to defend the left Phoenix. Oathhh is still chasing LASBRA all the way back to base. LASBRA is going to go ahead and make his way back officially to the fountain. But Oathhh can now work his way towards mid, as you were calling. Ducky walks in. Ducky will walk himself back out. That was a bomb from Dardez that did barely 10% of Coast HP at this point. Eldritch Hounds, they walk into left side Phoenix and they take it.
Yeah, it seems like aura defense items make Coast a tank as well, as long as he's standing near Quig. Very nice for the Eldritch Hounds, who now have a heat check on Dardez. That is an ideal target for Dardez, and it doesn't even look all that good. Oathhh a bit late on his own ultimate. Loses out on the kill potential on a LASBRA, but I think still incredibly survivable. Not exactly threatened by LASBRA even without that cooldown.
Oathhh is just keeping check on LASBRA this game. Walks in, drops a couple autos on Laz. While again, 4v4 on the right side. Now Nika is caught out away from his team. Boulder is there. Quick credit for the kill. And the setup with it. Oathhh will now join the fight. PBM onked, shoved against the wall, forced to use an ult. Now LASBRA picks up Quig, who will use his own beads just to get back away. And the right side, Phoenix, well again, this one will go to the Hounds. Snipes by Vote don't do anything. It's 2 birds down for the Eldritch Hounds.
So the Fire Giant power play has net both side lane birds for the Eldritch Hounds. The Jade Dragons will have to contend with fire minion waves for the next couple of moments. But we're no stranger to this situation. We've been here before. The Jade Dragons certainly have been here before as well. Now it's all about elongating the match. Drag it out as long as possible. Get your relics up. Go 6-slotted. Upgrade your starters. And maybe you'll have opportunities to fight back. Phoenix's respawn. The Titan will regenerate HP. So long as it still draws breath, there's a way back in. And you only hit level 21. So we're getting close to full power now for the Eldritch Hounds, who are all approaching 6-slotted. Likely have enough gold in pocket on a few of them to actually finish up those items. But the Fire Giant itself, I think we're a far cry from the Jade Dragons actually defending that one. Likely the Eldritch Hounds walk away with another uncontested.
Second Primal Fury now for the Eldritch Hounds. Now Fire Giant was already easy for them to take down, now just that much simpler with the dropping of that objective. So now they can march their way right to the Fire Giant. 10 seconds till it's back up. The Jade Dragons, the question is, will any of them maybe step up to try and take this one away? Vote can do it from range if he had ultimate, but still on cooldown for the time being. The other towns right on spawn and right on cue. We'll go to the Fire Giant, and within about 5 seconds of it coming to the map, it has already descended right back into the pits of Tartarus. Now the Eldritch Hounds can continue their onslaught.
Only one bird standing between them and the Titan of the Jade Dragons. Base defense didn't look good in the 4v4 or the 1-on-1, but now to be a 5-on-5, unless Oathhh decides to go push up waves, maybe on that left side where the Jade Dragons have made their most headway in map state. Regardless, there's plenty of time to play with. 2.5 minutes with the Fire Giant buff. The Jade Dragons have not gotten much stronger since the last time we'd seen them skirmish. Major keys, I think. LASBRA needs to find some more value on this Fenrir. Bottom of the player damage charts, has not forced out any beads barring Quig. And that's just the once, and that's on right side bird 24 minutes into the game. Need to see more from this Fenrir. Otherwise, who else is going to burn these relics? Who else is going to get through these defensive resources from the Eldritch Hounds? Maybe Dardez, but he's in trouble.
Dardez beats to get away from Oathhh, but Oathhh will keep the chase going. Undying Love used to keep him alive, and Oathhh forced to jump out, but that just buys space for the Eldritch Hounds once more. Another Phoenix. And they just waltz in and take left side. Soon to respawn. Won't be very healthy. It'll be that much easier for the Eldritch Hounds to grab. And we still haven't gotten a real chance to see what a 5v5 looks like for these guys, because every single time Oathhh keeps pulling at least one person away.
Yeah, has been doing a great job of separating the Jade Dragons, but Oathhh doesn't just burn Undying Love, doesn't just burn through Dardez's HP. Also gets rid of the Phantom Shell, the only Phantom Shell for the Dragons.
Oh, VaporishCoast speeds away from Nika. The ultimate is used. VaporishCoast gets one. PBM low. PBM gone. Coast grabs the double kill for the Eldritch Hounds and make it a triple for the kid. He takes down Vote. And the Jade Dragons with only 2 left standing and nothing left to defend their Titan. LASBRA dives in. Coast will follow right alongside him. Pulled out of the fountain, but saved by the good graces of Dardez. That might be the only reason that these 2 Dragons still stand tall. The Titan falls. It's the Hounds with a 10-0 shutdown.
Talk about a good freshman phase for the Eldritch Hounds. A 10-0 start to their week. Goose-egging the Jade Dragons, one of the most veteran teams here in the league. Players that have been playing for 4, 5, 6 years now, struggling against these rookies. The Eldritch Hounds, they're on a heater, and it might just continue.
I mean, it was right out of the gate. I mean, Oathhh, as soon as he hit level 5, goes to mid, fights Dardez. Dardez uses beads, he's out. Dardez doesn't do anything. As soon as ult comes up, goes over to left lane. Does the exact same thing over to Vote. Drops up, ultimate, beads are gone. It just felt like Oathhh was doing so much better at burning beads off a single ability than LASBRA was doing with his entire kit.
Yeah, and Oathhh, it wasn't even committal, right? It was, I'm going to rotate through mid, I'm going to throw my ultimate at Dardez. Sure, hope he's scared, and Dardez was scared. Immediately beads, dash into the tower. Had LASBRA found a little bit more of that throughout the early game, there could have been opportunities to look for individual picks in lane, but because that Fenrir had such a quiet performance, no beads were ever burnt. I mean, even go back to the dual lane skirmish between Vote and Coast. That only happens because Oathhh burnt Vote's beads.
Yeah, Eldritch Hounds just commanded game number 1. We'll have to see if the Dragons can make a bounce back or well, the freshman's going to have a pretty strong start to their weekend. We'll find out for game number 2 right after this break.
I'm a little bit naughty, I'm a little bit too consumed, but every part of my body is telling me to run away from you. Come a little bit closer, yeah, yeah. Come a little bit closer, yeah. You're a little bit crazy. It's been days, but you never change. What's love got to do with it? He comes around, better knock that stuff down. Come a little bit closer, yeah, yeah. Come a little bit closer, yeah. To all my ladies who got a brother that doesn't treat them right, put your finger right in his face and tell that man bye-bye. I'm too fly, I'm too fly. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. You're a little bit selfish. You get mad every time you lose. You can't take me with you. I'm scared you're gonna blow your fuse. Come a little bit closer, yeah. I can really start over, yeah. In the back of my mind, there's someone waiting on me. You're just wasting my time because you're scared and lonely. Finally got some closure, yeah. I can finally start over, yeah. To all my ladies who got a brother that doesn't treat them right, put your finger right in his face and tell that man bye-bye. I'm too fly, I'm too fly. Bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye. Here's to the memories. Cheers to who used to be. Your friend said that you left me. I'm glad that's what you believe. To all my ladies who got a brother that doesn't treat them right, put your finger right in his face and tell that man bye-bye. I'm too fly, I'm too fly. Oh, bye-bye, bye-bye. U-G-L-I, that's how you spell goodbye. U-G-L-I, you'll
you got a glass, fill it, cause I need it now. Money is a in it, I don't wanna think about it. So if you know the song, sing it, cause I need it now. Take me to a place where the music's loud. I don't wanna think right now. Flashing lights running through the crowd. I don't ever wanna stop. So let's get out. Let's get out. I got
Absolute dominance is the story of game number 1. And towards the end there, as Mifflin had highlighted, J-Mac had talked about, it seems like the Hounds are on a little bit of a tear, Mifflin. It's Trelly. I just said Mifflin. Of course, that means Hound stocks are going up. And of course, you at home might want to get yourself a jersey. Get something to feel like you're in the atmosphere, rooting for the Hounds as best you can. They're on a 3-win streak, and now they're 1 game away from making it 4 sets in a row. And of course, you can see them right next to the Jade Dragons. Of course, if you want to root for them, maybe jerseys. That's what they need, right? You can actually feel the energy when someone has like the jersey, the hoodie, the t-shirts, any of that you can get all at shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SBL or shop.smiteproleague.com. All of that, of course, made by Skulls. Fantastic merchandise, very comfortable. It's such, excuse me, such an easy recommendation. I love wearing those t-shirts pretty much any opportunity I get. Trelly, though, let's talk about the Hounds beyond their jerseys and how comfortable they can be. And instead, talk about the gameplay and how comfortable the Hounds looked in Smite.
It didn't seem like Oathhh could do anything wrong. You know, he was sort of just showing up to buffs as you would expect. That's what a Bakasura does. He was able to get a fat lead. We talked to the casters, and they highlighted that LASBRA, unfortunately, was just not able to get the ball rolling. This Fenrir didn't have a good matchup. I wasn't a fan of the early game here for PBM on the Afro. I haven't been liking the Afro much at all. I mean, I feel like I say it every time I get up here. If you're not kissed to a hard carry, the Afro loses tremendous value, and that there was no kills, so you're obviously not kissed to a hard carry, right? And in this case, Vote couldn't really get online. I think Dardez was able to do some decent damage, but was getting targeted out pretty recently. It just didn't seem like anything the Jade Dragons were throwing at the wall was beginning to stick. And they have this pick-based composition with the Fenrir, and, you know, as the casters highlighted once again, the beads burn was not there. If you're trying to pick this Fenrir to get those beads and to find some picks, and you have 0 kills by the end of the game, the whole draft in its entirety just didn't work there. So, first pick, Aphrodite. Remember that. That's what they valued the most. I'm thinking maybe some more pressure, change it up, because it didn't do it for me. I didn't like the composition throughout, and maybe if those early ganks go a little bit better, you could say the comp would have worked, but hindsight's 20/20, and they couldn't get the ball rolling.
Well, it's time to figure out what they're going to change here. Dragons first pick, picks and bans, game number 2. Trelly, I'm going to use what you said and take it to bring in 2 points. I'll make it 3. The first one is Hazer had actually tweeted during those picks and bans, 2 coaches and you're still first picking Afro, which I just thought was hilarious. Follow-up, sometimes you got to let the win rate speak for itself. 29%.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's,
not at all.
I'm checking the math and running it by a lot of people here. And that's not good.
No, it is
Most of the time, you just avoid it. Maybe it's time we start seeing Afro fall down. We've only seen 5 wins of the 17 games. So it definitely has some room to grow. And the other half of it is now that the Dragons are first pick, the Hounds just beat it. There's no way they ban an Aphrodite here, right? Because I don't think they're too worried about it.
I would say you ban Herc. If they don't, they're not worried about it. But I think Hercules has been such a pivotal first pick for really any team that's able to grab it. I think Ducky's got a good time. Nika would love to get his hands on it. And if the Hounds don't want to give it away, you know, they have the option, of course. But I just think the Hercules is so much more impactful. It's easy engage, right? When you put yourself on a healer in support, you lose that ease of engage, whereas Hercules can just walk up, you know, send someone to the backline for you, especially these tanks that aren't buying beads. It just seems so linear. It's so easy in this case. So I believe it was the Hounds who went Herc into Yemoja Merlin. The Merlin was taken away. So we'll see if the Hounds are going to switch something up here and go towards banning away that Hercules so it doesn't get through, because obviously they're not in first pick anymore.
The thing that had been banned, or at least gods that had been banned that are not on the list anymore, are Serqet,
And Hell.
could still hear, and Hell, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think either of those should be banned over the Hercules in this matchup specifically?
The Serqet, I would ban. Yes, I think that now that I think about it, if it's between Herc and Serqet, you could certainly let the Herc through just to pick Serqet. But I think LASBRA would want the Serqet over
He
giving
might first pick.
over giving the Hercules over to Nika. And it looks like the Hounds are gonna ban the Herc. And if I see Hell over Serqet, I was gonna say I would be flabbergasted. There's no way that pick goes through. So the Jade Dragons are able to grab the Serqet, and this is such a better look here for LASBRA. Much more ease of pulling beads. Incredible late game with the new crit build. I think this is already such a better look here for the Jade Dragons.
This is their second game, first picked overall, and a lot of that's just because she gets banned a lot of the time. We'll say, though, 15 games in the top 3, right? So this will be the 16th there. 2 out of 16, that's what, 1/8 of the time that she's getting first pick, but still being let through. Maybe some opportunities for the Dragons to turn this into another one. We'll say 100% win rate in that one game, so small pool. But at least the numbers look good, feel good for the Dragons. That was something that the casters had talked about, Trelly. The lack of impact from the Fenrir in comparison to the Bakasura on the other side. Serqet likes to get hands-on, and
Yep.
LASBRA has a very mean Serqet. It feels like this is the lineup and the combination they might need.
I mean, their team fight just looks so much better. It's one,
It's one god.
It's one god. And think about it. Fenrir was, trying his hardest to try and pull beads, was going in so deep to get nothing, whereas Serqet can blink in, 2, jump out. She's got 2 different escapes. It's just so much better. And, of course, the Rama for the Eldritch Hounds is going to be prioritized. Getting that on coast is a big deal, and I see no reason why you wouldn't throw that Bakasura back over to Oathhh after the game 1 performance he just had. It still does have a decent matchup into the Serqet. Remember, the cripple is still going to affect 2 of her abilities as well. But she has so much movement. She can avoid the Baka. She can outrun him. Those are the sort of things that you pick this Serqet for. And, of course, the early aggression, which is exactly what the Jade Dragons were looking for. Yemoja is going to be the lock-in, which, does classify as a healer, but I think just has so much more control. I was talking about ease of engage with picks like the Hercules. And you're going to follow it up with the Hell, which I can only assume is going towards mid. So mid lane, some damage being built onto this Hell, I would assume. We saw, yesterday? I think Ven went the sickle into the breastplate of regrowth Hell. I'm hoping that's not what we see. I prefer full damage Hell in this spot. She does do crazy damage. Maybe just the regrowth to try and outrun Baka and Guan Yu. That could make sense.
Yeah.
But I want to see the majority being built damage, because Hell hasn't been played in mid for a while, but she still does do crazy damage. You may forget because you've just been watching support builds, but she can swing.
And her support damage, or her support builds, and support in general, hasn't been as wildly successful as we've seen her in mid. Of course, I also have the one flashback. I think the only person for a while that was playing her in solo was Variety. It made it look absolutely insane. The Hounds answer back with a little bit of healing on their own. The bans are going to roll through, and Trelly, I'll let them take a moment. I do want to ask you, though, because the Yemoja brings so much to the table.
Yep.
We just saw a really good game from the Hounds with this pick. Do you like the fact that they put a Bakasura this high up over the Yemoja? Like, they've gone carry, jungle, solo, even though they knew there was no way that Baka was getting picked up alongside the Serqet, right?
Yeah, it was something that they didn't have to do, for sure. But it seems like the Eldritch Hounds just valued getting that Baka in before the second wave of bans, and they were fearful that the Jade Dragons would take it away. I wouldn't be surprised if Oathhh just said, hey, I just had a good Baka game. I want Baka. Like, I don't. Quig has plenty of gods he can pick. Just give me Baka. I do not. I do not want to think about what god I want to play after this second wave of bans. And Quig said, yeah, you're right. I've got a deep god pool. Just grab it here, and we'll let some bans come through. The Cabrakan, the Outwash, and still the Aphrodite. There's a reason she didn't get banned away, but
You want to talk about that 29% win rate again?
I mean, if it gets locked in, my one contingency has always been, do you have a hard carry to link to? And the Bakasura is much more of a hard carry than the Fenrir ever can be.
So, you would like it here.
Oh, I'm not gonna like it, but it's.
But you prefer it more than
I
the last
prefer it
game.
in this team comp more than the previous team comp.
And you know what? Sometimes, Trelly, slight improvements is what you get.
Yep.
And that's what we're getting here. But it is also notably the Hounds playing it, as opposed to the Dragons. Maybe that'll shift something up.
Today you face the great sage.
And who knows? They could still lock in something else for Quig. That might be an Afro going mid to combat a Hell. We aren't entirely certain yet. We're just using a lot of background data to assume. Izanami gets locked in, who I'm going to give a lot of credit over to Netruoid, has looked incredible on this. I think a lot of that win rate is Netruoid and the Warriors. I see you making a face. If it gets locked in, we'll talk about it. Instead, we'll talk about what is locked in. The Sun Wukong. We got to see this, what was this, last week, and it was...
I believe Final K played it.
Pretty much the same that you would expect a Sun Wukong to be. It was leaving you wanting more, having you question a little bit as to why it got picked. What does it bring into this comp other than survivability?
I think that's what it brings, is you're not going to get camped by Bakasura. You just go up into the Somersault Cloud, you're going to live. But you also have some good dive once you get some damage online.
He's the Jing Wei of solo lane.
Yep. I believe Haddock, because we did a tier list, he said that Wukong is the god of, oh, I don't play solo, but I got solo, so I'm just going to play Wukong. I'm not going to die. I cleared the wave fine. You do everything okay.
He just described my entire solo
yeah,
lane.
if you roll into a rank
Wukong
game,
or Bolota?
Yep, and it's just, there you go. Unfortunate, I got solo. Guess I'm going to play the god that can't really die, and that's exactly what Wukong brings here. You're fearful of getting your buffs invaded, you're fearful of getting ganked, and you just want that level of safety. But the Eldritch Hounds are going to round out that draft with the Tiamat, which I think is just a good AoE damage. It's going to provide Divine Ruin pretty easily. You're not going to be able to get camped. But of course, that Serqet still does have a very strong level 2 here, especially with Hell, who, remember, we haven't seen her in mid for a while, but she does just have twice the abilities of most other mid laners, unless, of course, Tiamat gets her jump at level 2, which most Tiamats aren't doing. So you have plenty of damage to follow up with that Cobra's Kiss if LASBRA wants to get aggressive.
Definitely opportunities, I think. And we, like you had said, it's sometimes off-putting how much damage a Hell can do in the blink of an eye. Good taunt early on for a Serqet. Sometimes that's the difference maker that you need. And that's what the casters were calling for at the end of the last game, right? You get blanked by the Hounds, and what are they talking about? They're talking about the fact that the jungler did not get active. We didn't get to see anything from LASBRA early on, and that Fenrir just, in an instant where he's not getting super far ahead, isn't getting anything done anyway. Serqet, you had already said it, alleviates that. Now that you've seen the rest of the team, are you feeling like this is something the Dragons can do to, at the very minimum, not get blanked, but actually win this game? Yeah,
they certainly could. I like a lot what the Jade Dragons have done. They've pretty much guaranteed they have pressure in duo, and they are going to have pressure in mid until LASBRA decides to leave. It seems like they put Nika on Wukong to say, hey, I'm not ganking solo. Good luck. I'm going to be pretty much everywhere else, so just try and survive, which I think is a good look here. You have some hard carries you can play through. It's going to be difficult to try and survive on this mid Hell, though. I mean, the Bakasura and the Aphrodite combo doesn't really care about anything Hell has to do. You're faster. You're able to use that slow. You're just going to chase down, use the backup, use the jealousy damage. It can get dicey. So if there's some good peel here for Dardez, I think the Jade Dragons have definitely increased their chances here. A better draft for sure.
A better draft. Aphrodite's on the other foot. Maybe that changes things up. Maybe the Hounds continue their streak. We'll find out in game number 2.
Jade Dragons have got to fight back here to stop the pace of the Eldritch Hounds. It's going to have to do more than pump the brakes. They're going to have to full-on slam the brakes with both feet if they want to stop how fast the Eldritch Hounds are able to mow through game number 1 and potentially could do the same for game number 2. It's J-Mac, Mifflin, and Doug back to bring you game 2 between the Dragons and the Hounds. Hounds not really changing much of at least their core, keeping Oathhh back on the Bakasura. Ducky now kind of being forced over to something different because the Hercules was banned away, but Guan Yu definitely still in that top tier of the solo lane pickups. One thing that isn't really up there in the solo lane meta that we've been seeing a lot of. We've seen it once so far this phase, as in Final K's hands, I believe. Now, Nika on the Sun Wukong. What are your thoughts on this one for him, Mifflin?
Man, what was it, Season 8 where it was Sun Wukong and Jormungandr every game? I think it was. Or was that Season 9, Phase 1? Either way,
it was 8.
Yeah, my thoughts have not changed since then. This god is stinker, all right? I mean, he's just a stinker in my mind. You've got dive, and any god with a lead is going to look good. So let me get ahead of it now. If Nika pulls a lead, a rotation from LASBRA works out, Ducky loses 3 blue buffs, Sun Wukong's 4 levels up. Very good. Awesome. You could dive the back line. You're going to be survivable, and just because you have the lead, you're going to deal more damage. It's the consistency with which you find the lead or don't find the lead that is my primary concern. Primary concern for the dual lane of the Eldritch Hounds is whether or not they can actually clear these buffs. We'll resustain pretty quickly, though, thanks to that Aphrodite. So, Sun Wukong, who are the targets? Who are you diving on consistently? Benny, I guess. Quig, if you can catch him in the jungle. I just don't see anyone that Sun Wukong, A, threatens, or B, doesn't threaten Sun Wukong. I don't want him fighting Oathhh. He's going to get owned. He's decent into Ducky. In the laning phase, he's not going to struggle nearly as much. Nika likely won't be behind 1,000 gold just because Sun Wukong's very good at clearing wave, thanks to the buffs Jinku Bang has received most recently, additional damage to minions. But I'm just not seeing a whole lot of success factor in the late game team fight.
LASBRA gets aggressive against Oathhh. Takes down to about half HP. Dardez has really been burning through his mana pool on this hell early on to get that early lane pressure. Has done just that in the mid up against BennyQ. It's kept them under their tier 1 towers. Not the best early clear for a Tiamat or a Bakasura, but certainly nothing too much to struggle on. Maybe silver lining here for Quig and Coast is that because it's an Aphrodite in that lane, two of them able to sustain up from there. Near tumble in the early game. I think Coast got down to just about 100 HP up against those camps. Not the easiest for an Aphrodite and a Ram to try and triple camp clear.
No, not at all. Especially when you compare to the triple camp clear of an Izanami who's just got piercing autos on every auto. That pressure going to be stacked up for a good long while, I'm assuming. No way that VaporishCoast and Quig can fight back into that lane. I mean, just the Yemoja pressure, Izanami should win out in the laning phase. Once supports rotate out, the 1v1 becomes a little bit more interesting. And that seems to be the adaptation that Jade Dragons have made across the map. Perhaps concerned with how much gold and experience they had lost just by having waves shoved into their towers, they've drafted pressure in both mid and left to alleviate that. And you can see it inverse completely. VaporishCoast and Quig fighting for their lives to keep the minion waves out of tower, as opposed to last game where it felt like they just lived on the Jade Dragon side of the map.
Mike and Vote definitely making it easy for themselves over in dual lane. And Oathhh, once again, trying to go for back camps. Trying to relive back up to the name that he had back in the SCC. The back camp bandit was something that was kind of thrown away towards him a few times. Just of how often he'd be sitting in enemy territory, taking those back harpies away. Now still living up to it on the Bakasura. Doesn't steal the blue away from LASBRA will take quite a bit of damage from Ducky, that Tallow Assault. Nearly the full duration in. Quig stunned out. Will try and walk through. Has a little bit of healing back. Coast is fighting through. It's a stun from Mike. And a return stun by Quig. The damage from Coast is hitting a little bit harder up against Mike and Vote this time through. And they'll be able to walk back up to lane, but Mike's not giving up. Quig is still fairly low in HP, but able to sustain back up.
And still has potions in pocket as well, so he'll be back to full HP very shortly. Take a peek at the potions for Vote. None left. Coast, excuse me. Vote's still holding on to 1 HP pot, and PBM has the one to his name as well. So, sustained battle currently favoring the Jade Dragons, and mana running low for Quig means he'll be likely forced back to base very shortly. Any bit of fight back that Coast can find while Quig is still there, significant. You really want to burn through that last remaining HP pot from Vote before you're forced to head back to base or before supports start to rotate out. Second round of neutral camp spawns up, and the Jade Dragons will take this one as well. LASBRA having a much better time here in Game 2, getting involved and matching the rotation presence of Oathhh.
Ultimate in by Vote. Quig is low, gets hit back by the Riptide and caught inside the rivers. This should be a first blood over to the Jade Dragons. It'll be on Mike and a second one for LASBRA, this time through the dual lane down of the Eldritch Hounds.
Yemoja just looks so much better than this Aphrodite pick, man. What did the death say? 28%, 27% win rate?
24, 29, something around there.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of data on Aphrodite as well, don't we? It feels like she's been played a fair deal, pick ban near, 80, 90% somewhere in there, and still losing that much. I wonder what it could be that keeps attracting these pros to this god.
I saw Jake do really good with it a couple times.
Man, Jake did look real good. You know what? I'm in for it. If everybody's aiming to be Jake, I can get behind that cause. But for now, just seems like whichever team's got the Afro's going to lose out in that early game. Her pressure, a bit weak. Her sustain, amazing in the late game, but takes a good long while to get there. Whereas Yemoja, has sustained similar levels in the laning phase, more pressure, and more teamfight utility with that ultimate.
Oathhh beats to get away, jumps past LASBRA. Now it's BennyQ versus Dardez, and Benny's winning that fight, but can't continue under the tier 1 tower. Quig shows up just for some backup support, but the 2v2 definitely at least peters out to even between them, but that does, at the very least, get the beads away from Oathhh. Probably the biggest win for the Jade Dragons in that scuffle.
Was Benny sending his minions down Coast's lane? Coast already sacrificing a bit of his own farm earlier by tumbling, but now having to split it with Benny. Probably not an ideal situation to find yourself in. Pressure continues from the Jade Dragons. Coast just trying his best to collect what little farm he can. Here comes the boys, though, to bail him out.
PBM, nowhere to go. The silence hits 2 from Vote, but PBM is just waiting for that last Omi tick to go through,
Yeah,
but he's
tanky.
just a little too tanky with that prophetic cloak online. And Mike will be able to walk away from the 3-man gank in his lane. Now Nika trying to go for a blue buff steal. Stun doesn't hit anything. Dash, not gonna be there. Nika steals away the blue.
It lived with 1 HP after the Guan dash. That is so unlucky for Ducky. Well played by Nika. Leveraging that safety that Sun Wukong has, essentially allowed to go for those styles of play. Worst case, jungler shows up and you turn into a bird and fly away. Double worst case, he catches your bird, you jump into a cloud, heal up, and fly away.
We saw this in game number 1. We saw it just earlier in this game. Undying Love keeps Quig alive for a moment. LASBRA dashes in, and that's just enough damage. Spread over towards Coast, but Coast is going to roll an aggressive 3 versus 1 up in the sky. He needs all 3 shots. He's got 2. He's got the 3rd one, but it's just not enough damage. And Oathhh is a little too far behind. Maybe a pick onto Mike with Benny rotating through. 1 more auto is good.
What about Vote?
And Oathhh puts the Hounds on the board, but now Vote is out of position, fighting against 2. He's got the boomerang almost, but a jump over. It's a double kill for Oathh, and the Hounds are fighting right back in.
The Jade Dragons, maybe an overextension there. Quig lives for so long on that rotation, survives for so long, forces so many resources. Had LASBRA not been forced to use his leap to secure that kill, likely would have been all the Jade Dragons making their way out of that exchange. Instead, Quig, Undying Love timing just perfect. Maybe just enough stacks on that prophetic cloak to keep him alive. And allows the Eldritch Hounds to rotate their way through. Benny finds every single tick of the Primordial Onslaught. And from there, Oathhh gets a little bit of an infusion of gold, a double kill, to catch back up to LASBRA. That's what you want to see from this Bakasura. You need him involved in these games. You need him involved in the early game, burning through these relics, feeling confident in his ability to be a threat on map. If he's relegated to playing in the back line and trying to play spoiler to LASBRA, you're not getting the full value out of that regurgitate. You're not getting the full value out of your jungler. Oathhh is a hyper carry player through and through, wants to be making plays on map. You can see it in his rotations, where he's headed when he's on the enemy back camps. But from behind, it's very difficult to play that style.
Now 2 kills under his belt. Maybe helps him out a little bit. Tier 2 towards his bladed boomerang, so crit should be online momentarily for Oathhh. Once he gets a little bit more gold, makes his way back to base to pick that one up. Coast down about a level to Vote, thanks to the 2 assists that Vote's been able to get into his name. Just the early pressure that he and Mike were kind of handed to almost on a silver platter just by the early buff start. Really seems to have been what slowed down this dual lane of the Eldritch Hounds because of that. Jade Dragons at least start this game out strong, but now the Hounds are starting to pick up speed again, but the Jade Dragons will go straight to the Gold Fury. This is what the Hounds were doing in game number 1. Difference is now the Hounds have shown up, at least to see these objectives started up. Gold Fury now being pulled around. Coast barely squeaks away from the wall, but the objective is still up there. Now has been leased, and it's a full rotation in by the Eldritch Hounds. 3 men through. Oathhh finds 2 in the ultimate. Only Vote's able to dash away. Mike just barely through, but with BennyQ hot on his heels, it's 1 more shot for the mid laner of the Hounds to take him down.
Dardez on the chase. LASBRA here to help. Double taunt. Benny and Quig burnt quickly. No help for Benny. It's just VaporishCoast and Oathhh nearby, and they are uninterested in the life of their mid laner. A double kill for LASBRA to turn things around immediately into an invade. I thought that was a clean victory for the Eldritch Hounds. VaporishCoast rotates through, gets rid of the secure from Vote, who's using his ultimate, trying to secure the kill on the coast. But instead, the Eldritch Hounds split to the wins. Even at 50, 60%, you'd think Oathhh could rotate back after healing to help out in the fight, or maybe Quig could get there, but simply not the case. And it's the Eldritch Hounds who fall down. The Jade Dragons come out big on that one.
The Jade Dragons, they will continue at least their early game up against the Hounds. Something we didn't really get to see out of the Dragons in game number 1. Now a 2,000 gold and 3k XP lead that the Dragons have been able to get for themselves. Quig trying to play catch-up in the support role for himself. Down level 7 to level 8. Almost the same position that we saw Mike in previously. Both of them starting in for the Prophetic, though Mike doing a much better job getting his stacks this time through 11 versus 4 up against the Aphrodite. The Eldritch Hounds gotta find their way back through. Started off strong with Oathhh. These ultimates have been impactful during these fights. Found 2 people last time through, forced vote out, but gonna need a little bit more on rotation from his team. Maybe a little slow to kind of get into that last team fight.
Yeah, Oathhh now does have the bladed boomerang finish though, so very powerful, much stronger in this next fight than he was the previous. Will have burst potential on LASBRA so long as LASBRA doesn't get the taunt off first. So the Jade Dragons maybe can pull out the Gold Fury once more. Lead slightly larger than it was previously. I would like to see the Jade Dragons play a bit more with the aggro on the objective. Pull it, reset it, resustain, leverage the healing from PBM and Dardez, rinse, repeat, and win out on that war of attrition. Quig is the only dedicated healer that's in this 4-on-4 on left. And once Ducky gets involved, you know, it becomes a little bit more of a back-and-forth battle so far as sustain is concerned. But until Soul Laners rotate out, it is a clear advantage to the Jade Dragons. The longer the fight goes, the better it is for them. They should look to drag out these fights. Whereas in the first Gold Fury, it felt like they really wanted to get it on that initial pull. It was a pull, Coast shows up, slows it down, but that reset came real slow.
Now Gold Fury for the Jade Dragons. Coast up into the sky, but snipes are a little too late this time to slow them down or to take it away, so the Eldritch Hounds will answer with a Pyromancer immediately in response. The Eldritch Hounds lose out on one objective. They get another one. Jade Dragons in a much better position here in game number 2. This 3k gold lead still continuing to slowly climb its way back up. The level disparity between the dual laners, between Vote and Coast specifically, 2 levels down. BennyQ can't catch a break in mid. Tier 1 was taken just earlier over in the duo, now it's the Tier 1 in mid taken from Benny.
Yeah, the Jade Dragons playing fast, to be sure. Knocking down that Tier 1 makes it easier for them to rotate throughout the entirety of the map. Maybe start looking at this Fire Giant the next 5 or 6 minutes. But for now, with nothing left to push, the only thing you could really imagine the Jade Dragons rotating through is the solo lane. Maybe knock down Ducky's Tier 1 tower, but pushing into a Tier 2, pretty unrealistic at this point. Continue invading, grab your farm and neutrals, start bleeding out the Eldritch Hounds on map, but I don't think we see a concentrated team fight until these neutral objectives start to respawn.
So now, what do the Jade Dragons do with their lead? Well, there's no objectives to go for, so not much in that regard. Maybe just try and start a fight right before one comes up through and guarantee themselves maybe another Fury or maybe even the Pyromancers that fell in sync with it at that point through, but the Eldritch Hounds. And maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit on this one, Mifflin, but I'm already looking towards potential sieging. That's where the struggle has really been kind of for both of these teams throughout this phase. Jade Dragons, I mean, how does their siege even kind of look up against a team like the Eldritch Hounds?
It looks like a whole lot of healing, so that they could stay on the Phoenix line for a good long while, but ranged artillery damage, they're lacking a bit. In that, displacement largely comes from PBM. Feels like to me on Siege, assuming the Jade Dragons are doing the sieging, it is almost entirely contingent on PBM's ultimate. If it's a strong ult and it locks down 2 key targets and you can find those picks immediately, the Siege will go well. Siege through kills, essentially. But if Yemoja ult doesn't find value, if a Phantom Shell is there and it's ready and they walk through it, I could see the Eldritch Hounds very easily stalemating this game just by nature of having a more standard mid laner. Benny should be able to keep those minion waves out. Healing from Ducky and Quig once they're together is ridiculous. It feels like a synergy card. You ever play those card games and just 2 cards really work real well together? That's Guan, and Aphrodite, the additional CDR from Guan's heal, making Aphrodite heal more often. Just really ridiculous to fight through that. So the Jade Dragons, I think, will try and find picks before they go for the actual 5-on-5. 4-1 split, this, that, or the other. Not exactly great for the Jade Dragons either. So long as Oathhh is within 1 to 2 levels of LASBRA, should be able to fight back in pretty consistently.
Well, LASBRA's bead's gone. As Oathhh gets aggressive, drops his own ultimate down. Used the blink and his own beads, actually, immediately in response back, so... Oathhh now down both of his relics. LASBRA still holding on to blink. The Eldritch Hounds trying to put some fight back into the dual lane, but will not stick around to actually take down Tier 1 tower. Nika's rotated through. Fury up in about 40 seconds, maybe early rotation from Nika. And LASBRA taking a trek through the jungle. He'll spot Ducky on the rotation in. We got all 10 players on the left side of the map. BennyQ coming back in from base. At least tells me, Myth, that we might be seeing a fight around Fury.
And take a peek at relics. Beads off of both Oathhh and LASBRA. Where are you going to find the value? Who's making use of those burnt relics? Oathhh on the one side, if he can just make contact with LASBRA once his ultimate is back up. Feels very good about his odds in that 1v1, a couple lucky crits. Could really turn that around. Who's dealing with Oathhh, though? Who can dive onto him? Doesn't seem to matter. Ducky's dead already. Missed it. Happened so quick. Loses his beads as well. And now Quig in trouble.
Quig uses the ultimate just to survive, but gets thrown right back by LASBRA. Survives a little longer, but with 4 players of the Dragon standing by, the Hounds have now lost 2. Nika 4 levels up on coast. This kill's not even worth it for Nika at this point. And he won't go for it. Instead, it's just distraction because the Jade Dragons, they're going for a 16-minute Fire Giant. BennyQ is on the way, taunted by LASBRA. LASBRA going to be the one to keep Benny out, and he'll do just that. No shot, no chance for the Tiamat to get in. The Jade Dragons, slowly but surely, will take down the Fire Giant.
It's so tough. You're breaking down the team fight, trying to figure out how things are going to go, and all of a sudden, one pick turns into 2, and it turns into the Fire Giant so quick for the Jade Dragons. That base defense we were hypothesizing about just a few moments ago, maybe not even true, considering how far ahead now the Jade Dragons are. Experience primarily the issue here. Nika, I'd said earlier, from ahead, going to look pretty good. He is very ahead right now and going to look real good. Doesn't even necessarily need to jump onto the mage. We saw what VaporishCoast does to the Sun Wukong. It's nothing, by the way. Spoilers if you were blinking earlier and you missed it. So, Ram, a non-factor on this defense. BennyQ going to have to work really, really hard. Quig, not tanky at all. He's got 7 stacks on Prophetic, and that's just about the bulk of his defense outside of Lotus. I think the Jade Dragons collect what little gold is remaining on map, push their lead to around that 10,000 mark, and maybe if they find a few picks can go for a Phoenix, but I think we're more so looking at next Fire Giant before they actually approach the birds of the Eldritch Hounds. Eldritch Hounds, in the meantime, need to find something on map. This is a good start. Ducky knocks down a Tier 1 tower, potentially a bit more with the help of the rest of his team. Even if you die here, I wonder, will the Jade Dragons be able to make a rotation of Phoenix with both Nika and Dardez on this side of the map? Doesn't seem like it's going to matter, though. Won't be dying here, say the Eldritch Hounds. Unless LASBRA's got something to say about it.
Oh, doesn't have his jump to get over the wall, and it's just that easy
He tried to
for
blink it.
LASBRA. Yeah, I think he kept trying to fish for the one spot that he could blink over the wall, but could not find it, so he just gets caught out inside the blue buff. It's a pick for the Dragons, and that'll simplify their siege moving forward. Immediately to the Tier 2 tower is VaporishCoast with enhanced minions. That'll be an easy push down for them. Only towers in the solo lane remaining. LASBRA and Nika, they should be able to take that one down with the help of the minion wave on its way.
Should do. It's going slow, but minion wave here, and the rest of the team going to join up very shortly. Oathhh on respawn. Hasn't changed up too much, is what I was trying to say earlier. Even if you do die, I think the Jade Dragons will be able to do much with it, especially with how short those respawn timers are at level 15. Jade Dragons, is this true? Are you going to keep up your siege? 2 members on left, 5 versus 3 on the right side.
Not even a full 3. Oath's not there. It's just 2. Teleport in from Ducky and a Roost Rebuke separate the fight. Phoenix goes down, and all 5 of the Dragons can fly themselves right out thanks to help with a Riptide. A full chase from the Hounds. Oathh has cutoff potential, but he's more interested in the farm. The Eldritch Hounds just give up a Phoenix to the Dragons.
And I'm looking at the relics, and, you know, I am clinically blind. Keep that in mind.
Oh, you are?
No Phantom Shell pickup?
No.
Yeah, that's not great. That's not great for the Eldritch Hounds. Ducky, Quig, Coast, all locked down immediately should they find themselves within the rivers. They'll be rebuked quickly. The Eldritch Hounds no counterplay now for the Jade Dragons ultimate. PBM, I had said earlier, I mean, if his ultimates are finding value, they're just going to have an easy time on these sieges. He doesn't have to work through relics anymore. He doesn't need to concern himself. He's throw them up, you've done it.
So now with this massive XP difference between the teams, and still 3 between Coast and Vote, and 11,000 total XP difference, but I mean, outside of the jungle, it's 1 to 2 levels at least just about everywhere. The harshest lead being in that duo lane. Coast has not been able to find successful farm after losing his tower so early in the game. And now, we might get our first proper defense and proper 5v5. This is what I would say if the Jade Dragons didn't immediately stop that. Head over towards Fire Giant, set to respawn here in just a couple seconds. Maybe instead go for a pick onto BennyQ. He's all by himself.
Whiplash.
The rest of his team is on the other side of the map. The Dragons are going to collapse in on the Tiamat. BennyQ, you got to run far, you got to run fast, but your legs won't carry you that quickly. Nika, credit to the kill. The Jade Dragons with a full collapse on the mid laner. Ultimate up for Mike. Means that likely no chase from the Hounds.
Man, the Hounds, they even if they could get into the back line now of the Jade Dragons, Coast is level 16. He's doing no damage. He's 3 items into his build, 21 minutes in. BennyQ is the damage now for the Eldritch Hounds, and he's off the map. Surprised the Jade Dragons don't continue their own siege as opposed to run away. Fire Giant, though, too appetizing. A target will be exactly where the Jade Dragons put their pressure. The Eldritch Hounds doing a good job of at least finding what little farm they can in these moments of reprieve between siege attempts of the Jade Dragons. Fire Giant falls, Primal Fury pulled, Nika shows face, and that's just it.
LASBRA, will he show up alongside his solo? He does, but
give me all your gold.
Misses on the taunt, takes away 3 of the gold chests from the Eldritch Hounds. A lot of comeback gold that would have been so necessary for the Hounds to get at that point, but Jade Dragon stripped that one away, prevent the Primal Fury from being taken as well. And now it's once again on defense. Maybe this time I can say a 5v5 defense.
Don't hold your breath, bud.
I'm going to try not to. But you would hope the Eldritch Hounds maybe have learned the lesson. You don't want to leave one player out by themselves to farm. Now, granted, in BennyQ's defense,
he was essentially on Phoenix.
He was at Phoenix line, but with the commanding lead that the Dragons have at this point, feels like even being outside of Phoenix without a buddy with you is surely asking for a death wish at that point.
Or even in Phoenix, you need Emperor's armor so that thing can actually fire back, right? And doesn't seem to be the case here for the Eldritch Hounds. Jade Dragons taking their time as they maneuver the map, though. I thought they'd really try and make the most use of this Fire Giant on siege immediately, but it's a split all the way across the map. 3 on left, 2 on right, and perhaps a free pick, VaporishCoast.
Oh no, where's your buddy, Coast?
There he is.
It's a little late to the party, but it's just enough to keep LASBRA and Nika away. 4 stack to the right side of the map. Only BennyQ by himself on left to defend against 3.
1 minute on fire.
Right side Phoenix is respawn, but a Fire Wave and Nika in tow will make sure that that one likely goes down, even with Ducky standing by. Get the minions out as best as he can. Nika doesn't really want to step in. He's only got a couple defense items to his name.
Nika's got it.
But Nika should be able to take that. Because he doesn't have a whole lot of defense, he's instead invested in a little bit more damage. Slowly but surely, Phoenix falls to the solo laner. Oathhh versus LASBRA. Still going to be difficult now. 3v3. Rivers Rebuke on the left side. Mike low. Phoenix shots there. But the snipes are, well, they're all off the mark. So they do no damage to Mike. And he's going to heal himself right back through. Mid-Phoenix as well gone to LASBRA and Nika. Now all 5 to the left-hand side of the map will be the only way that the Hounds can defend. But how can they defend against LASBRA? He's dove right in. Has he gone too far? No, he's fine. Ducky steps too far up. He's got to head his way back. And BennyQ gone, but to dive in for Nika. The Jade Dragons are storming into the throne room as they've now taken all 3 Phoenixes away.
All 3 Phoenixes and resustaining quickly. Fire Giant will keep them topped off for the next 10 seconds. But can you end the game from here? Benny, the most significant portion of the team fight damage lost for 30 seconds. The Jade Dragons like their odds.
Start up the Titan, but there are 4. Never mind, there's only 3 players from the Hounds there. Ducky eliminated as soon as he walks up. And same story goes for the Titan. The Jade Dragons in just 24 minutes have dismantled the Hounds.
I am a bona fide Aphrodite hater.
Oh, I'm on board with you here.
Me and all my homies hate Aphrodite. That god does not win, all right? Laning phase doesn't win. Late game doesn't win. SPL doesn't win. Win rate down to 22% now, and pick rate still in the 90s. That is absolutely ridiculous to me. I mean, it is seldom that stats so often indicate a complete disconnect from what we're seeing in the pro Ps and Bs and things along those lines. But this time around, it's the Jade Dragons who absolutely dominate throughout every single portion of this game. If you were watching at 1 minute and you tuned out and then tuned back in at 30 minutes, it was the same. It was a first blood in lane then. It was a kill in lane then as well. Clean stuff from the Jade Dragons and a bounce back they desperately needed.
I'm just confused in picks and bans because it was a Serqet first pick by the Dragons. That was step one to not going for the Aphrodite. The Hounds could have just taken Yemoja in the second slot, but they chose not to. Gave it over to the Dragons and now has come back to bite the Hounds instead. It's a 1-1 set going to game number 3. Who's going to come out on top? We'll find out right after this.
Well, the Dragons make things spicy here. Push us to game number 3. And Trelly, I'll let you choose which one of these paths you want to go down.
Okay,
There's
let me
one
know.
path where we talk about the Dragons, the success, and you can maybe latch on to, you know what, we'll talk about LASBRA. That's where that path leads.
Okay.
On the other path, it talks about Aphrodite. And you can, and whatever you want to say to that note.
Okay. I'm going to ignore the Aphrodite path because I
Yeah.
think we've beaten that one to death.
I don't know. I feel like we could beat it a little further.
We could. But LASBRA looked great. And I said it from literally the first pick of the Jade Dragons shot. I'm like, this team looks better. And you're like, but that's only one pick. I'm like, yeah, it looks
better.
It looks better. And the Serqet was a part of, 9 of the 10 kills coming into that siege. 5-0-4 for LASBRA right before those Phoenix began. You could tell the Serqet just got off to a great start, as you would imagine, because it just has such a potent early game. The late game build just translates so well. He ends up finishing 6-0-4, so a part of just about everything, as you would imagine. Unfortunately, on the other side, Mifflin said it right. The Afro loses lane. It takes such a long time to get online. Sure, if you're able to just facilitate a jungler, it's all well and good, but Oathhh was one of the only members of his team with kills and still did less damage than the Afro. I'm thinking less prioritization towards that support pick. And I loved PBM on the Yemoja. Since we roasted it game number 1, gotta say, a big glow up this time around here for PBM on the Yemoja. He was able to dive relatively easy. He still had the setup of River's Rebuke. Some of those things these healer mages just can't provide. And
that's the looking at it, I went through 5 games that is won. 1
Yep.
on the Kings, 2 by the Warriors, 2, I've already forgotten, I want to say by the Leviathans. No, by the Ravens. That was yesterday, right? That we got to see. And so Hurry looked really good on it, if you ignore game 1. And of course, as mentioned by the casters, Jake has been looking really good on that. We'll get in the picks and bans for game number 3. I'm interested to see where this goes. And Trelly, just because it's such an easy talking point right now, 28%, right? It only went down by 1. The order side win rate is 44%. It's a little better, right? The chaos side win rate is 11%. So if you're watching games and Aphrodite is picked on the right-hand side of your screen, I'm sorry if that's your favorite team. That tends to be the gist. The Ravens yesterday got the 1 win that she has on the chaos side, and that closed out that set. So it's not impossible. Just leaves us wondering.
Very unlikely.
Yeah, the Hounds, they're going to be first pick here. Hercules was their option first time around. Nox, Marty, Serqet were their focus bands. This time, though, Trelly, they're changing it up. Hell is going to be on that list. Horus, Merlin instead of the Vamana. So Serqet, Vamana, Hercules. Man, pick of the litter for first pick.
Yeah, gotta be Serqet there. It had to be. I was gonna say, if the Hercules gets banned and the Jade Dragons leave the Serqet open, there's no way the other towns aren't gonna take it. And now in this top 2, gotta be Yemoja. I can't imagine, given the way that this set has gone, and the Vamana made its way through. Wow, I was so focused on the Hercules getting banned away, didn't even realize the Vamana gets it through. Yeah, this top 2 is obvious. I would say this top 3 is obvious. The Eldritch Hounds decide, hey, LASBRA looks really good on the Serqet. There's no reason we don't grab that. And then, of course, the Jade Dragons say, okay, you gave us Vamana and Yemoja. It seems like a fair trade. The Jade Dragons are happy with this top 3 for sure.
Well, if you're following this set, and maybe even going at least into the last game yesterday, Ram has 3 games in a row where he's not won, which small because it stops almost immediately. The Ravens won with him. Game 2 yesterday has done pretty well. We'll see if maybe they can change his fate for this set specifically. Izanami locked in. Again, a pick that has been doing well enough, right? Gets the job done, good clear, and you couple that with a Yemoja. And Trelly, there's a lot of lanes that are going to struggle against these two, period. So some sort of either a Guardian that has good clear, something else maybe to balance it out. On the horizon, Terra, banned here by the Dragons. A Wheelish, banned by the Hounds. Which catches me a little off guard. It feels like we've seen Vamana mostly in the jungle, right? It's not been strictly in the jungle, but mostly. And they're hedging their bets, saying that it very well could end up being a Vamana going into the solo lane.
Yeah, it doesn't scream to me a LASBRA pick.
And he's on the Ravens.
He has been able to play it.
Not a single reaction.
No, it just doesn't scream it to me. So in that case, I wouldn't be surprised if the Vamana does go over to Nika. Just a good matchup into Guan Yu. You're going to be just fine in that regard. But LASBRA could take it. And for my money, I would assume the Jade Dragons don't even know where it's going just yet. They're going to wait to see the bans. The Oathhh would just have a pretty good matchup into the Serqet if you're trying to deal with her in the jungle. Just pull her out of her leap whenever she's trying to engage or disengage. That's going to be a good time. And once again, the Outwash. This has been banned pretty consistently here in the second wave of bans. So that's going to leave open a couple different options here. I'm going to assume that the Aphrodite is going to be looked over here in game number 3. Because Quig is such a dynamic player. He provides so much for his team, and it just didn't look like he was able to do enough in that second game. Especially when the set is on the line. You got to put Quig on something that can facilitate his team. And in this case, the Afro just can't do it. But I do like the jungle's hover here, which tells me that, you know, LASBRA already knows his matchup. He knows he's going to be up against this Serqet. And he's trying to find some CC to try and lock it down. He went between the Baka and the Naja. You don't have that much burst yet, but I guess in the last pick, you could go to a mage to try and follow up with that Windfire Wheels.
Glory to Athens.
And it's got to be the Athena, another pick that LASBRA does love to go to in the jungle.
And one that, honestly, tracks with what we've seen in the record. That being said, has not been wildly successful for them this year, right? We've seen it every now and then when it comes through. Feels like Trelly, it can do well on its own, but a lot of the time it's still very reliant on what's around it. They don't have a mid pick yet, but do you think the Izanami alone is enough to make this Athena look good, or do you really need that extra punch?
No, I need to see something to follow up with these taunts, and the Iza's not going to cut it. I want to see, I mean, the Morgan Le Fay is something that Dardez likes to go to. I think that the Morgan would also be pretty solid here. A Serqet could give us some more damage, that sort of thing. So there are options in this case here for Dardez. I just need big burst damage because so far it's just not there. If you're reliant purely on the Vamana and the Iza follow-up, it's just not going to be enough. But the Eldritch Hounds, the Baron support, pick that I haven't seen in a bit, still does bring a lot of lane pressure, something that Aphra was certainly lacking. You're able to clear the wave. You're able to have some good matchups, and it used to be, I'm not going to say a counter, but it used to be a second pick towards the Yemoja because you could pull her back in even through her Riptides if you're using the ultimate correctly. So I like the CC here from the Eldritch Hounds. They're relying a lot on trying to pull some beats.
Baron, though, I mean, you're playing it as a support up against the Baron support guy. So definitely going to have some trouble in that regard. AMC, we've only seen once, I believe, by the Dragons. Won that game. Dardez loves this pick, has loved this pick for a while, and is going to go back to it here, Trelly. Now you've got 2 ADCs to follow up on the taunt. Is that, in your mind, enough to make the Athena look good, really?
Yeah, it is. And that's enough because you've got the Shred. 2 auto attackers late game into a taunt are really going to be able to follow up, and I think because it's Dardez on the AMC, it gets a little bit extra of a buff for me. You know, it's just a pick that he's loved to go to. When the AMC was one of the strongest picks in the game, he went to it. And when the AMC was not looked at all, Dardez still looked towards it. So I think it's just a pick that he finds a lot of success on. Your team just has to make sure they're helping you out with the CC because, again, Serqet, Guan Yu, Baron, they're going to be looking towards these immobile characters. The AMC, for sure, is going to have to watch the positioning. But I think Dardez should trust his teammates to be able to take life of the party for him and, you know, help him out when he's getting dove on by LASBRA, or I guess in this case by Oathhh, and just so much CC coming from that Serqet. I'm thinking the Peel is going to have to be strong here.
Peel. The name of the game sometimes. I'm a little curious, though, and there's so many layers to try and pull back here.
Yep.
I think Guan Yu versus Vamana is going to be a very interesting matchup, going towards the Yemoja, what Baron's going to bring, how those two affect the duo lane. Rami Izanami is just going to be some hunters playing the game. But then in the jungle, I mean, that's admittedly in game 1. That's where the conversation was in game 2. That's where the conversation was. I think that is probably where we're going to be having a bit of the conversation here going into game 3. Serqet, more hands-on, more active, more able to get it done on her own.
Yep.
Athena, a little more reliant on the things around them. how do you see the trajectory for both of these teams based on their junglers?
Well, when you pick Athena jungle, it opens up this huge dynamic of Oathhh is going to walk up to lanes and be like, I want a gank, but LASBRA could show up in a moment's notice, provide all this mitigation, big damage, and I don't know if I want to go in because of that. It looks like a 2v1 right now, but then LASBRA shows up. And because of that, you have to look at every single gank while still playing for that Athena ultimate. So I think Oathhh is going to be a lot more, a little dialed back, saying, yeah, I'll go in after. If you can somehow make it so you are going in after the Athena, her engage gets so much worse because she can't use her ultimate when she's already in the lane. She's not just going to ult 2 feet away. She wants to use that global presence. I'm thinking Oathhh is going to play a lot of counter gank this game.
A lot of counter gank potential coming out from Oathhh. I think it's going to be in the jungle. That's where we got to look. It's Athena for the Dragons. Of course, it's J-Mac and Mifflin to take us through Game 3.
That's right. Game 3, a big game for both of these two teams because they're both trying to fight at the bare minimum for that 2nd seed spot in their divisions, and getting a win here will help jumpstart that for both of these squads. The Eldritch Hounds and the Jade Dragons. Game number 3. It's J-Mac, Mifflin, and Doug here to bring the action and going over, at least in the kind of jungle matchup here, the Athena for LASBRA, something he brought out at the very end of last year, Mifflin, on the world stage. Worked real well for the Bolts whenever he was doing it then. Now piling that one alongside, honestly, some of the top tiers that have come along in the tier list. I mean, you have a Yemoja in the support role. We've seen how well she's done in the last couple of games. Vamana, who's been banned out twice. Feels like the Jade Dragons got just about everything they wanted with this comp.
Yeah, I like this Jade Dragons draft a lot. Objective burn certainly there. Secure probably where you're lacking the most, but you've got some MacGyver wonky options for securing objectives if you're feeling really desperate. Athena stacks up a whole lot of damage. Defender of Olympus hits pretty hard. Time it well. I mean, it's not easy. It's not exactly ideal. Is it a possibility? Absolutely. So the Jade Dragons, I think, happy with what they've walked away with here. The Eldritch Hounds as well, though, have got themselves a pretty strong composition. Primary question marks likely around the Baron Samedi out of support. Not something we see a whole lot. Takes a little while to stack up some of that defense. Doesn't have the support shifts that have maybe made some of these other healers a little bit more prevalent in lane. Doesn't, strip away power like Hell does, or share protections like Aphrodite does. All my homies hate Aphrodite. Don't lock her in. But what he does bring is non-committal initiation. And initiation has always been the weak suit of mage supports. How are we starting the fight? Life of the party every single time. You're getting at least one, right? Or forcing some relics, or forcing some leaps, or maybe it's the root from range, the in-combat healing that's team-wide that gives you additional movement speed and chase time potential. So on paper, Baron Samedi support sounds very, very good. But the desk is right. It almost always comes down to which junglers get involved earlier. Seems like Oathhh has already struck in lane. Dardez dropped real low.
LASBRA's already dashed. Whoa, hold on. Solo kill for Ducky on the right side of the map?
That's not ideal.
Nika must not have had his dash yet. Only level 2 versus level 3 of Ducky.
He popped Wing Shard for sure.
Walks up through. Doesn't have dash. Wing Shard, not enough movement speed. That's first blood going over to the Hounds and a solo kill for Ducky. Not the way we would expect this game to start.
No, Vamana dropping in the early game is just an aberration from the standard, isn't it? I mean, that is not at all a pace that you can become accustomed to seeing. I mean, he's just so safe. Once he has that dash, has elected not to pick it up this time around, and I'm sure almost exactly what had happened was Ducky realizes, oh, he just used an ability that wasn't dash. I'm going to go ahead and initiate on him. Pop shard, get your cooldowns back, rinse, repeat, and run him through. Nika, early game fall, not the biggest deal, especially out of the solo lane. It feels like no matter what, once you tick over to level 6, there's going to be a good degree of safety afforded to you, especially with Colossal Fury and how that plays. But getting to level 6 has all of a sudden become miserable.
It's going to be a little difficult. Won't be impossible for Nika. It doesn't really need too much backup. Instead, it's Oathhh making his way over. Maybe a second kill onto this Vamana. Try and keep him down, but
surely not.
Ducky's clearing the wave pretty hard. Nika's going to be sitting right by that tower, but could open up the door for a buff invade.
Nice try.
Ultimate going to be avoided by Nika as he uses the dash to get away from the cavalry. But now with the junglers showing up, Nika low in mana. It's a steal for Oathhh. And a successful invade for the Eldritch Hounds, keeping up their pressure in solo.
Yeah, one of the weaknesses of Athena out of the jungle is that she doesn't necessarily have the best secure options for buffs. your highest damage ability, your ultimate, but also shield wall. You need that second tick of it. Not exactly going to be easy to secure your buffs with that one when a Serqet's staring you down, one of the fastest clears in Smite. So Oathhh correct to just walk up, drop his one, keep things simple. PBM trying his best for an invade here, is successful. Will he make it out alive? I believe so. No rotation from Benny. Actually heading over to the right side, so a Riptide, all you need to create a bit of space between you and VaporishCoast and the Jade Dragons. Like bandits in the night, roll through, take the purple, and disengage.
So it's a blue for purple trade. Not one that Nika's probably too happy about, but certainly one that the dual lane of the Dragons will be excited for, because a lot of the pressure from game number 2 did come from the dual lane. I think both Coast and Quig, recognizing how low their damage output is this time around, did only like to do the double camp start as opposed to the triple that we saw last time that nearly took out Coast just earlier on in game 2. So game 3 at least a little bit better off starting for the Eldritch Hounds, but because they lost out on that purple, don't have access to level 5 for PBM and Vote. They've both got ults. They've got 2 really good targets to use it on, especially if Coast steps too far forward. He's got 5 now, and that should be the end of the road for this potential kill.
Yeah, I like that try from Mike. Tries to connect the stun so he can get behind Coast, potentially toss up that ultimate. But the damage output, not exactly high enough, no junglers nearby. Coast would have likely just gone to the air in trade, and I think PBM correct in his evaluation that River's Rebuke just a bit more valuable than that Astral Barrage at this portion of the game. Taunt connects with Dardez, but not LASBRA. On the other hand, Taunt connects with Benny, but not Oathhh. Just a small trade in mid between the Jade Dragons and the Hounds. I just don't see a whole lot happening in mid this game. Dardez is very capable of sitting on tower line, tossing out Honey, clearing wave, and then going back to tower line. And Huang is just about the safest mage in the game as well. So if these junglers want to get involved, I imagine it's going to be more so towards the side lanes. PBM has been playing aggressively. Ducky can likely just be left alone on an island, so Oathhh will probably head over towards dual lane as well. Where do you really want to find that pressure? I mean, continue invade attempts, always ideal, and if Ducky were successful, would have pushed his lead even further ahead. But killing and where that's going to happen anytime soon, it's hard to say. Duo seems like a safe bet, though.
That's where Mike is going to at least continue to set up for himself over in duo. Now forces Quig to rotate back over. Snake Toss will hit, but Mike throws a Riptide before it fully roots him in place. And he'll have just enough distance to stay away from Coast and Quig now. Even Oathhh rotating to the left side, thinking maybe the Eldritch Hounds could get aggressive, maybe try and make a play up toward the Dragons to battle 1,000 gold lead in favor of the Eldritch Hounds. Blue buff does get taken away by Nika there on the bottom side, so an invade for an invade on the right side. Somewhat evens things out. Now with the Golden Blade by Nika should make clear so much easier for this Vamana. But another attempt at a gank possible here by the Hounds.
Could be. Just voting Mike for now. Oathhh shows himself. Dardez here as well, turning the numbers advantage around.
Dardez did land his ultimate on Oathhh, and that's enough to lock him through. River's Rebuke is good, and Quig caught out in the middle of 4 in no man's land. It is 2 kills for the Jade Dragons in 1 fell swoop.
Man, and that's just Dardez playing heads up on map, realizing exactly when the Eldritch Hounds are going to try and get aggressive. He could have easily just stayed in mid, said, like, I'll farm up against Benny. No matter what, LASBRA will get there. You don't necessarily need to me. But instead, makes that perfectly timed rotation. I mean, you could not write it up better for the Jade Dragons. Immediately into a fallback Gold Fury. The Eldritch Hounds, they're going to have to let this one go. Nobody in range to defend. It's burning slow, though, isn't it? LASBRA really starting to work through it. Quig nearly gets there in time to make that interesting, but not quite capable. Could prevent some backs, be a bit annoying, but that's all he's going to do here. Kill pressure very low on the left side for now. And it's the Jade Dragons who strike first, but only insofar as catching themselves back up to the Hounds.
The Hounds, with their first blood in, with some of their invades and neutral farm, built up a nice lead that the Jade Dragons have, as you mentioned, knocked it right back down and even things out. So experience maybe at least where the conversation then goes. Level up for BennyQ in the mid lane, but 2 levels up for PBM over in the support role. We've seen this a couple of times this set alone where Mike or Quig falls behind a little bit, does end up getting their catch up just to get themselves closer, but see if Oathhh can take this buff away. Pretty easy for a Serqet with this level of damage this early in the game. Oathhh steals away yet another blue on the top side away. Now Nika suffering from the success of Oathhh.
Yeah, that is tough. Nika just been able to fight his way back into the lane. Just got Golden Blade, was able to invade a blue buff on his own. And then Oathhh rotates through and essentially washes away the work that the Jade Dragon Soul Laner has had to put in since that early tumble in lane. Blue buff spawning now. Could be another attempt from Nika, but instead, wave clear. Can't possibly know where Oathhh is if he had gone back to base, so won't be meandering into the enemy jungle. For now, both teams just waiting. We're a couple minutes out from Pyromancer. Could be the first POI. Feels like Vamana likely would get a bit more value in a team fight on the right-hand side at this point in the game, as opposed to Ducky on this Guan Yu. You're really reliant on the rest of your team as Guan Yu. You want that cavalry charge to be followed up by the dueling dragons or some ultimate shots from Coast, or maybe even Oathhh getting involved, whereas Nika, on the other hand, says, I'm going to go jump onto Benny. I'm going to wait for the float to end, and then I'm going to grow real big and start stomping on his head, and I don't need anybody to help me do it. I'll do it on my own. Might dissuade the Eldritch Hounds from fighting on the right side.
Might get some backup from LASBRA. Defender of Olympus used to reposition and get LASBRA back on the left side of the map. BennyQ had already floated himself a little too far for Mike to chase through. Now Mike under fire again. Life of the party to try and pull him back through. Beads used by both Mike and Dardez on the same coffin. And Quig happy with that trade.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect for your support. And that's exactly the type of stuff. I'm back on my Afro soapbox here. That's the type of stuff Afro ain't giving you, okay? Give me any interaction where Afro's burning 2 beads. You can't do it. It hasn't happened. Baron Samedi's doing that for you. And now there are opportunities in mid, so long as Coast doesn't suffer too much in left.
Ooh, early beads and an ultimate from Coast. Just from LASBRA stepping up a little too far along with Vote. The Dark Portal was used by Vote, so that ultimate on cooldown for a little bit, but now an attempt. We're towards LASBRA. Snake Toss misses from Quig. The steal of the shield buff is a possibility. Does get taken away by the Dragons, but now Oathhh has gone in. Dash on top of Vote. Vote able to fade away as fast as he can, but with Ducky standing by, there's nowhere to go. Now Ducky up on the horse will chase Mike out and separate the team fight while the rest of his team works through the jungle. Purple buff invade. Cyclops camp invade as well. The Eldritch Hounds, they get more than just their kill.
Yeah, Nika rotates as well. Both Soliners getting involved on the left side. Ducky, though, much shorter cooldown on his relic, 160 seconds on Nika's teleport. Do you want to take down the left tier 1 at this point, VaporishCoast? I mean, very possible that he could have there, or at least knock down the Bastion, but getting rid of this tower would have allowed Vote, who is not even that far behind or behind at all, to have just farmed up on tier 2 and continually zoned out Coast. I think that's an issue Coast has been running into recently, where they've been very willing on the Eldritch Hounds to find one pick on left, immediately knock down the tower, and then Coast is left in a precarious position of, guys, if we're not doing objectives and taking team fights on the map, I'm just losing out on farm. They're freezing me out. So I like that adaptation. Leave the tower up and instead look towards the neutral objective.
Primal Fury started by the Hounds and will be secured as well. I'm bringing the purple buff over to witness the action for the Eldritch Hounds. Now the Fury and a couple of kills under their belt. Jade Dragons, their answer back will be a Pyromancer, so a 1-1 trade out of objectives yet again. We've seen this all throughout the set. One team takes Fury, one takes Pyromancer. Typically ends with a nice little trade out there, but most important for Coast is losing out in the early is about leveled down to Vote. He's now been able to not only catch back up, but has in fact taken a small lead over Vote at the same time.
Yeah, we'll see whether or not that amounts to much. With Gold Fury off the map again, not a whole lot to fight over on the left-hand side. I wonder. We're starting to hit some pretty major inflection points in builds across the map here. I mean, junglers both pick up their primary second item, binding on one side. What will likely be a Ratatahooty for LASBRA in second slot, I imagine. Ratatahooty just to burst, increase that burst damage. Athena does a surprising amount of damage, especially once you get to that third, fourth item slot. Polynomicon about core on this god if you actually want to secure some kills, get some autonomy, and not be as reliant on the rest of your team. So until then, the Jade Dragons might just slow things down a bit. It's on the Eldritch Hounds if they want to fight to find opportunities on the map.
Fast riptide for Mike. And then a beads after. Oathh's done everything that he can to try and get that kill onto Mike, but ends up expending a couple of resources away from Mike to do so. But
this is dangerous.
Oathh did use Blink, and now he's caught out inside River's Rebuke. Taunted back in, and nowhere to go. Barely dashes to get past, and a coffin by Quig. It's not enough, because Nika has shown up to the party. He has taken down one and is now keeping Coast out. But BennyQ, what is the damage that he's doing in the back line? That's 2 for Benny, and 1 for Ducky. Could be 2. Dardez has got to run as fast as he can to dash in, and a Tallow Assault will make it a double for Ducky. The duo double of the Eldritch Hounds knocks down 4 as Nika can only stand by and watch.
Man, I believe that's, of course, Benny's damage. The Phoenix Flyer does a whole lot there, as well as the Dueling Dragon. But I think Coast got like a 2 or 3-man final shot of Astral Barrage as well. Just completely obliterates the back line of the Jade Dragons, a fight that had started off well for them. Oathh picked out very early in that skirmish. Turned around, just stacked up a bit too heavily. Did the Jade Dragons and knocked down easily. Take a peek at the relics as well, J-Mac. I mean, things are going to get worse before they get better. Nothing for Dardez, nothing for Vote. Mike doesn't have beads. Nika had to use everything just to get involved and barely gets involved at that. It's time. If the Eldritch Hounds can find anything on map to fight over, they should, and they should do it quickly.
But it's going to be a minute for Pyro and for Gold Fury before those
tier 1s out there. Maybe tier a mid tower?
Well, they got tier 1 over in left, along with their siege, but tier 1 and mid does not seem to be accessible for the Eldritch Hounds to try and fight at this point, just because PBM standing by. As you highlighted earlier, Dardez is very easy for him to sit under tower, throw out Honey, throw out Swarm.
Yeah, good luck doing it without beads or Aegis, you know?
I mean,
that tower ain't there to protect you. It was at levels 1 through 5. That tower is to protect you. 15 minutes in, you're there to protect the tower.
Well, maybe with Mike standing by, it'll help to at least try and protect that one. Especially LASBRA, as he's lurking through the jungle. 2 items deep now for the Athena. Sphere of Desolation, Rod of Tahuti. I wonder how long LASBRA delays before getting that poly online that you were talking about. Adds so much extra burst to your combo. It's an easy setup, too. Taunt, auto attack. There's your easy burst damage, but might be a while before we see LASBRA start that. But Eldritch Hounds, they're going to get active early. In fact, Quig drops a bracer on the side of the jungle. And tier 1 tower might be a possibility. Quig will tank this one up. Coast will pump a couple shots up against it. And tier 1 tower, right before objectives spawn, this one goes to the Hounds.
Yeah, the Jade Dragon's just not willing to defend without any of their relics up. I mean, 20 seconds still on Dardez, no way. A taunt from Oathh is a death sentence. A stun from Ducky, a death sentence. So the Jade Dragon's correct to let that one go. Pyromancer immediately afterward. And now the Gold Fury. Maybe, if you can do it quickly. You've got secure advantage with the Runic Bomb, as well as just having a standard mage, but this is taking a while, and the Jade Dragons, their relics, they're all back and available.
Could see a 5v5. Objective is pulled, half HP. PBM walks in, drops River's Rebuke immediately. Nika to the back line to find 3, but the coffin will pull him right back in. The objective has been completely let go of at this point. It's bouncing back and forth between a couple, but the Jade Dragons, they've expended a lot, but so have the Eldritch Hounds. The Hounds, they'll pull the Fury once more. Heal off the mark by Quig, still taking up the Fury. Meanwhile, Doug gets to the backline, and BennyQ as well. The Dueling Dragons do a lot. The Hounds get the Fury, and they'll pick up Nika, who steps too far forward.
I can't believe Ducky survived that. The taunt was perfectly timed from LASBRA. Dardez throws out his damage. Vote's there, sinking damage as well. But Ducky's just too tanky. If it's going to be a taunt to start up every fight, no item better than Spirit Robe to keep Ducky alive. Additional damage mitigation every time you're affected by that hard CC. So 3-0-4 now. 7 out of 7 affected kills out of the solo lane. Ducky having a field day. BennyQ having a field day as well. And it's been clean. The Eldritch Hounds take the objective. They take the fight. They've taken the tier 1 mid tower. They've taken just about all they can throughout the early. Only thing you can do now, regroup, push out some of these waves, clear out the jungle, both speed spawning. Maybe force a fight on the tier 1 on right, but any fight that happens now, J-Mac, doesn't matter where it is or who started it, it's all for one thing, and it's the Fire Giant.
So Fire Giant definitely could be the next big objective for these two teams to fight around, fight for. for the Jade Dragons, they're fighting at a near 6,000 gold deficit up against the Eldritch Hounds. Nika, level 16 versus
it's hard.
level 18 Ducky and level 16 Oathhh. Crit, just through the passive at least for Oathhh, is doing a lot of damage to Nika, but now Quig wrapping around. Bit of an awkward spot for him to go. Hits the snake toss on the immune target, so won't get much there, but opens up the path for the rest to go through.
Poor Mike.
Dashed on and burned away by BennyQ. The Eldritch Hounds are just marching around the map, taking whatever they please.
Yeah, Mike tries his best to peel out for his ally, needs Nika alive if he wants any odds in that next team fight, but sticks around too long himself and is dropped down. The Fire Giant pulled. I told you, doesn't matter who starts it or where it happens, the next fight would lead exactly to this. Fire Giant 50%, the Jade Dragons, nowhere to be seen. Instead, can only do their best to scrounge up gold and all the meanwhile. Tier 1 and left, taken. Tier 2, grouped on by the Jade Dragons, but with Ducky here and with fire on his belt, enough to dissuade them from keeping up their aggression. Getting deja vu here. The Eldritch Hounds, post-Fire Giant, immediately regroup, try and punish the significant grouping from the Jade Dragons on the left, push down this Tier 2 on right.
Still 3 members of the Dragons on that left side of the map. Actually 4 if you count Mike, who wasn't even with them at that point. Will now finally go back to base, but it's too little too late. Tier 2 tower for the Eldritch Hounds to start up their push with their Fire Giant buff. But maybe given how early in the game it is, unless some significant picks come the way of the Eldritch Hounds, might just be there to knock down a few towers with this buff. Starting with Tier 2 on right, it's a good start. Tier 2 left and mid, maybe the next calls for the Eldritch Hounds. So for the Dragons, maybe in this position, Mifflin, lead's pretty significant for the Hounds to start out, 7k up over them for these fights. Do you even attempt to defend it at Tier 2, or do you just maybe wait for this next Fire Giant push?
I think you could definitely soft defend at Tier 2. Certainly can if you get picked here, though. Pyromancer pulled by the Jade Dragons and reset as the Eldritch Hounds. Remember that there's even more neutral farm to be had on the map. Pyromancer taken now by the Hounds. Tier 2 soft defense, I think, J-Mac. Have Dardez throw out some honey and then immediately back up. Bees, you know. But dedicated defense, I'm not seeing that until you get to the Phoenix line. It's going to be a struggle, though, for the Jade Dragons. If LASBRA lands Confound on anybody, it essentially gives whoever you taunt an aimbot. So if he's taunting VaporishCoast, even with the damage stack up, this Athena's just going to melt.
Honey used at the Phoenix line. No defense on the Tier 2 by the Dragons. Hounds now regroup and head left, but don't really have a minion wave. That's been pushed all the way thanks to Vote's efforts on the left side of the map. So Oathhh will send himself through the jungle to try and maybe clear some of those out, but maybe it's just a case of who even needs minions. There's just enough damage and a runic bomb in pocket for the Hounds. And they'll spend the one that was in Benny's pocket to take down Tier 2. And 45 seconds left. We'll go ahead and use the last few seconds of this Fire Giant to go ahead and grab a Primal Fury. And now the Eldritch Hounds can head back to base, reset, spend up the golden pocket. You're looking at 1,000 plus in hand for a few of the players on the team. And level 20 is achieved for a couple of those as well.
Yeah, I think you can push up a few waves and left before you start to head back to base. Just make sure the map stays as close to neutral or advantageous as possible before you start moving in towards this Fire Giant. It's likely that the Jade Dragons don't group up to defend fire. They'll probably just farm up in wave, try and collect as much gold as they can. Don't love their odds in a neutral territory fight. And considering how early in the game it is, Fire Giant, not exactly a game ender, not like it used to be anymore. A very short duration on that buff. So Eldritch Hounds regroup, head to fire. They'll wait about a minute until that one respawns. Only thing you can do now on the Hound side to give yourself even better odds is clear out your own jungle, make sure Benny's got that red buff. Potentially look for invades, look for poke, but don't get overcommitted to the team fight. Don't get baited into a poor position. Is a hurry up and wait situation now for the Eldritch Hounds.
30 seconds till fire is back up. Coast pushing on the left side of the map. Getting his golden XP to hit that level 20 mark. Can't upgrade starter if he's got enough gold, and he does. So starting out upgraded, 5 full items deep for VaporishCoast. Plus able to pick up at least a Tier 1 mace. Likely a Titan's Bane is what we've been seeing a lot of ROM players go to. Get a little bit extra bang for their buck on that ultimate. With 5 seconds left on Fire Giant, the Eldritch Hounds already starting to storm towards the right side, minus Ducky. He'll go ahead and keep his push up over on left. The Jade Dragons, nowhere to be seen. It's going to be a late start on this Fire Giant, but doesn't seem that it's one the Jade Dragons are willing to even step up towards.
Yeah, I mean, there's just no way the Jade Dragons take a team fight there. I do like what Ducky's up to, which is I'll stay on left, I'll be ready to defend it. I'm not going to push up myself. You don't want to give over information to the Jade Dragons that the Eldritch Hounds have not significantly stacked the Fire Giant. With the knowledge now that there are 2 people on left, the Jade Dragons probably kicking themselves. Man, we could have defended that, but not the case. LASBRA
Oh, a couple of crits.
nearly makes it out of there with the Defender of Olympus, but a couple of crits is all it takes. Not just in passive anymore. He's got Deathbringer now, so those crits coming a little bit more often, hitting a little bit harder for Oathhh. LASBRA learns the hard way. 30 seconds of the grayscale to think about his mistakes. As the Eldritch Hounds, they start up the siege, and this time in earnest, in a 4 versus 4 in mid. Make that 5 with the TP. Ducky should be able to get involved pretty soon. He's actually just going to keep his push up on left. So 4v4 in mid. Tell a lie. Teleport late. We're getting involved nonetheless. 10 seconds left on LASBRA respawn.
Bracer on the ground as well. Huge power spike for the Eldritch Hounds, but they don't even need that. They can use a Runic Bomb that takes away half of the Phoenix. Oathhh is zoning Nika away while the Hounds will even use their Phantom Shell just to get some extra HP. Pulls the ultimate away from Nika. Does Quig, the life of the party expended. Very worthwhile, though, for the Baron to take away maybe the biggest tool that Nika has to get to this back line.
Yeah, Nika is now, I'm going to hit my knockup, and I'm going to pray that's enough, guys. You've got to do the damage on your own. Colossal Fury is the go button for Vamana, and has been pushed a bit early here in a retreat fashion. So Nika now relegated to a sideline in this next team fight. Left Phoenix, it's going slow. Mike going quick, though.
Dueling Dragons. Decent damage towards foe. BennyQ too far forward, picked off by LASBRA. Snipes in the sky from Coast. Not quite enough. It's Ducky who falls to Dardez, but Oathhh finds 1 in the back line.
Poison spread.
The poison goes over towards 2. That's a double kill for Oathhh. Nearly does it for the triple kill. Does get at the very end with his dying breath. And the Eldritch Hounds, they lose 3, they take 3, and they get a Phoenix.
Oathhh coming up massive for his team there. Benny overheats a bit with a dueling dragon. Nearly pulls back 3. Instead, puts himself out of position. But in doing so, baits the Jade Dragons forward all the while. Oathhh running amok in that back line. Completely dominating Dardez, Vote, and LASBRA. The Eldritch Hounds may have lost Fire Giant on 3, and they lose it quickly. But they got what they come for. Mid and left Phoenix taken off the map. Gold lead pushed even further in their favor. Enhanced minion waves slowly working through the entirety of the mid and left side. And the Jade Dragons reeling from a significant loss.
Dragons started that fight out so great, though. They took down 2. Phoenix was still alive throughout there. But all it takes is 1 poison explosion, 1 proc from the ultimate in the backline from Oathhh to set the entire Jade Dragons team fight ablaze. Oathhh picks up a triple kill with the last breath. And the Eldritch Hounds are able to take 2 Phoenixes on their siege. Their last couple seconds of the Fire Giant. Need a little bit of help from the actual damage dealers to do this, but we'll grab a Primal Fury. If that'll actually max stack them on Primal stacks to go towards this next Fire Giant.
Fire Giants never looked so easy for the Eldritch Hounds. We'll see exactly what it looks like in about a minute. Not much has changed between last Fire Giant and this Fire Giant so far as what the Jade Dragons are willing and capable of doing. Map state, of course, a bit different here as the Eldritch Hounds have broken the base. But functionally, similar positions. Jade Dragons will not defend in neutral territory. Instead, turtle up in their base, try their best to find opportunities. I think, if anything, they need LASBRA building defense now. LASBRA's damage output has been lacking in the last couple of team fights, and he's had to be very cautious with his taunts. If he had a bit more defense to his name, could essentially just be another dedicated initiator for his team. Make it easier for the double hunter composition to just start sinking in some of those auto attacks. But even the dedicated tanks of the Jade Dragons haven't looked particularly tanky to me. Nika burned quickly, PBM. I mean, generally the target in these team fights. He's one of the easiest to knock down. The Eldritch Hounds, they're just winning, and everything looks good when they're winning this hard. Only 1 bird standing between them and the Jade Dragons exposed Titan. Mid Phoenix will respawn shortly, but I'm not sure how long it's going to be alive.
VaporishCoast, full build now. On the ROM, BennyQ, same thing. So fighting at full strength, minus a couple of extra potions or elixirs. Not much stronger that this team can get on the Eldritch Hounds at this point. But we know the significant damage that BennyQ can deal, given the opportunity. It's actually Oathhh who's leading the charts on damage. He's taking, on average, about a third to half of Nika's HP every time he goes in. Double taunt from LASBRA to start the fight. Woo! And a shell used. The coffin trying to pull back through, but Dueling Dragons will help take them down. VaporishCoast gets one snipe, and unfortunately the River's Rebuke is not enough to save Dardez. 2 down. Oathhh picks up PBM. But PBM is going to be stopped by his own. No! Taken down by BennyQ, and now the poison has spread over towards Nika. It's just Vote and Nika left to defend against 5. The Eldritch Hounds will knock down one more bird, but it's 5 strong up against the Titan. Vote, Nika, they've got to get a lot of damage here. Nika still got ultimate. Keep your eyes on him. Does find the knockup, goes up into the Colossal Fury, but he's being ignored by the carries. Instead, it's all damage to the Titan, and it's the Eldritch Hounds who take the set in 3.
Heart goes out to LASBRA there. He finds an amazing taunt in the team fight. But when you taunt people, it makes them look at you. And unfortunately for LASBRA, did not need to be perceived, all right? Not exactly the position he wanted to be in. Immediately melted down. One snipe's all it takes from Coast. And from there, the entire team fight folds in on itself. And the Eldritch Hounds roll over the Jade Dragons.
BennyQ giving us also a good reminder this game as to why he played so much Huang last season. Just such a great pick for him. Gives him so much safety. And when you can get just a couple of clutch Dueling Dragons can really turn these games around. But really just felt like the collapsing in these team fights, the Eldritch Hounds felt so much more favorable. I mean, we even go back to the dual lane fight where Mike throws up a River's Rebuke. He's got 2 inside, but unfortunately the rest of his team also funneled in and just got collapsed on by the Hounds.
Yeah, the Hounds clearly identified how they want to play the game. In an ideal world, incredibly fast. And that's exactly what Game 1 and 3 shows us. If that's the case, and that's how the Eldritch Hounds are going to play all the time from here on out, I mean, freshman year might just be their year.
The Eldritch Hounds looking real strong here in phase number 1 in this path to Masters, and a good indication for how the remainder of their phase may go. It's a win for them in 3. That's it for If and I on the cast. We'll throw it to the desk to break it down.
That's right, Trelly. It ends up a 2-1 victory here for the Hounds, but a victory nonetheless, and a really good streak as of the last couple of weeks. I mean, things have really been picking up, and it kind of makes me think back to what we saw from them at the kickoff tournament. The question was, okay, is this one weekend? Is this going to be consistent? Now I think we can say consistent. They beat the Dragons here, and realistically, you can put the 5 players on a dartboard, throw a dart, have something good to say about pretty much any one of them.
Oh, yeah, and I'm going to start with Oathhh, just because I think he had a phenomenal performance on this Serqet. There was a time there on the left Phoenix where it looked like the Hounds were actually losing, and then you just go to Oathh's player cam, and he's popping off. He gets a triple kill by himself. The poison spreads, and sure, he goes down there, but just ridiculous how much he was able to do. And let me be clear, to be doing this much damage on a Serqet is just ridiculous. Like, those numbers are ridiculous. It just doesn't make sense, because it's all single target unless you're getting those kills, unless the poison is spreading. Oathh just had a fantastic game there, and of course, the rest of the team, as you said. I think that Ducky on this Guan Yu was super annoying, as you would expect.
Yeah.
As you would expect, the heals.
That might be an understatement,
yeah,
man.
I just think that...
He got a solo kill.
That's ridiculous, too. Level 2, like, very early on, Guan Yu finding kills. You got to make sure you're playing your kit to the best of your abilities. As you said, pick a player on the Hounds. We've got good things to say about them.
And when you look that good, the team finds success, right?
Yep.
And they looked that good in Game 1. They looked that good in Game 3. They still, I mean, they looked all right in Game 2, but there were definitely some things to maybe work on.
Right.
Of course, I'm sure that's going to be what they're thinking about going forward. This is only their first match of the week, so they do still have another one to prepare for, but they look really solid coming out of it. And, of course, the first set today. But after a successful run, we kind of want to hear from what the players, how they're feeling. So we actually have a member of the Hounds standing by.
For our post-game interview. First off, congrats on the win, and maybe we can answer Gormai's question there. How are you feeling after a win? You go up against the Dragons, win Game 1, rough game number 2, come back out on top at the end. How does it feel finding a big win against their squad?
It feels really good. I'm pretty sure that's our first 2-1 win, because all our sets have been, like, the ones we've won have been 2-0. So it feels really good to, like, win a set where you lost a game 2. So that was cool to see.
Yeah, definitely feels great there. Now I'm just going to address maybe the elephant in all of this one. Aphrodite, man, doesn't do great game 1 against you guys. You take it in game number 2, doesn't look great against the Dragons. Game 3, we see it ignored. You think maybe the hype around the Aphrodite is starting to fade away after a set like this?
Yeah, like, I think she is a little bit overrated, but Serqet's also just so broken. Like, they gotta nerf that character. Like,
I mean, after watching the triple kill that you got in that game there, I don't blame you, man. Maybe that god looked ridiculous in there. Talk to me kind of about the remaining part of the phase for your team here. You got a nice little win, pushing yourselves up close to that second seed spot in your division. Maybe within reach of being able to take that first seed. Do you think that that's a possibility for your team?
obviously first seed would be like really good to get, but I think we're just more focused on just improving and just winning the sets we have left, not really looking at like what seed we are. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys look good today against the Dragons. Oh, congratulations on the win one more time. I'll let you back with the team. Congrats. We'll throw it back to the desk.
Well, thanks so much, Janak. Nice to hear from Oathhh, right? And hearing maybe some of the decision-making that's going on behind the scenes. Maybe some things to expect and or not expect in the Hounds sets over the next couple of, I guess, weeks, right?
Yeah.
With week 5 being next week, the end of it all. And they do, as J-Mac mentions, Shelly, make those steps in the right direction. Upward is their trajectory, and it's been going pretty well for them.
I would say so.
That's also the only just the first set of the day, man. That's the thing that's going to be another wild thought for those of you out there. We've got a lot of SMITE that's going to be coming at you, and we're still in a portion where some of this is affecting standings, affecting you know, how, where these teams are going to be in that path to Masters. The Hounds getting this win. It's a 4-3, oddly enough. It's where the Ravens are at. The 5-1, I believe, is where the Kings are at right now. So there's still a lot of conversation to be had in that order division. You're going to want to make sure you tune in. The next one, though, is in the Chaos division. Warriors, they win this one. They seal the deal and get first for sure. And that's going to be a fun one to watch up against the Leviathan. So we're going to kick it to a quick break, and when we get back, we've got more SMITE.